Chapter 161. The Island Trial 1. Fry Starlight's POV. The first day back at the temple since my return, I was a full month behind the others in training. And not only that, I'd be facing upper-year students in an exam I knew nothing about. I needed to finalize my preparations for the Victoriad, and I seriously started to question whether I had enough. The skills I had stored until now, Phantom Steps, Hawkeyes, Ascension, Ignition, these were all meant to help me deal with the protagonist, Snow. Except for Ignition. I was hesitant to use it at first because of its overwhelming power and the severe side effects. I really began to wonder if the other skills would be enough. I had no time left to try and obtain another one, so I had no choice but to rely on these skills, along with my 10,000 steps of shadow technique. That was all I could count on for now. The mysterious ability I had received from the system still remained inactive. Shadow Adaptation. 0/7. I let out a tired sigh as I stepped out of my room, dressed in my temple robes. It's fine. Even if it kills me, I'll win. I headed to the classroom, my mind weighed down by heavy thoughts. While I was walking, lost in them, someone suddenly smacked me hard on the back. I'd sensed him coming from a distance, but I didn't expect that kind of welcome. You're finally back. A whole damn month, man. Hey Danzo. Where do you get all this energy in the morning? This is how a real man should be. You're the one acting like a sissy. There you go again with that description. It's your fault. That face of yours isn't helping. I thought I looked intimidating now, with my white hair and new features, but Danzo clearly had a different opinion. We walked together, blending into the crowd of students. It's been a while since I attended a temple class. As soon as I said that, Danzo stopped me. Guess you haven't heard. There are no morning classes today. What do you mean? He replied as we continued walking. Today's the announcement. The test that leads to the Victoriad. The moment I heard Danzo's words, I stopped in place. Today? Yeah. I was genuinely surprised. Was I really getting my answer this fast? It seemed the Victoriad would begin earlier than usual this time. Just thinking about it sent a shiver down my spine. A mixture of emotions. Excitement, anticipation, fear. It was closer than ever before. Danzo led me to a massive Colosseum-like structure that had clearly been built recently. Inside, a huge number of temple students had already gathered. All of them were waiting for the grand announcement, which would take place any moment now. Apparently, the entire empire would be watching what was about to unfold. For real. How did I not know something like this was coming? Sansa hadn't said a word. Was this her idea of a joke? As we entered, I followed Danzo to the seats that had been prepared for us. There, I spotted a few familiar faces. From afar, I noticed my fellow assassin, Ghost. He did the same and gave me a slight nod. Class A was seated around him, and at the very front sat the one destined to be my greatest obstacle, Snow. He looked the same as the last time I saw him, but I could tell he'd grown stronger. On the other hand, Class B was seated nearby as well. Everyone seemed as usual, except for one person who looked different this time. Ragna Cloud. He looked completely devastated. Danzo noticed too, and explained with a grim expression. Ragna, his father died in the recent raid against the Ultras. It hit him hard. I nodded. Isaac Claude. After his death, things had been difficult for Ragna. When the live was cut recently, the Empire had been dominating the Ultras. So imagine what it was like for Ragna to learn his father died right after that. It must have been hard, especially since he had no idea what had actually happened there. He didn't even know who killed his father, Lawrence. I decided to keep my distance. His situation didn't concern me. What mattered to me was the announcement that was about to be made. As if responding to my thoughts, the temple's new instructors stepped up to the platform, signaling the beginning of the long-awaited event. The new instructors entered one after another, each in a majestic manner, radiating powerful auras. It was hard to recognize most of them, since many things had changed compared to the original story. But I couldn't help focusing on that young man who walked in slightly later than the others. Brown hair, blazing crimson eyes on a still youthful face. His stance was flawless, his robes dignified, and that fiery aura surrounding him. How could I not recognize him? "I see you've already noticed," Danzo remarked, catching my gaze. "How could I not?" Danzo nodded. "He's become an instructor here at the temple. The youngest ever to earn that title at only 25 years old. Phoenix Sunlight." Danzo chuckled just thinking about it. "He's the youngest ever to break into the SS rank at that age. Only one person in history surpassed him. Your father, Abraham Starlight." I listened carefully to Danzo's words. Abraham was someone I knew nothing about. According to what I had written, Phoenix Sunlight was supposed to be the greatest prodigy of all. His talent was simply supernatural. To put it in perspective, Frost Moonlight had won the Victoriad 3 times and lost it 3 times as well. Yet he was still considered a prodigy among his peers. He was simply lucky not to have been in the same generation as Phoenix. After all, Phoenix had won the Victoriad 6 times. An undefeated record. Seeing such an influential figure standing right in front of me, in the flesh, even I felt a bit of excitement. But Phoenix wasn't the point. What truly mattered was the event about to be announced. As if waiting for the perfect moment, Headmaster Ivar appeared along with his aides, immediately stealing the spotlight. He stood there, releasing his overwhelming aura. Somehow, I could feel his lightning aura clashing with Phoenix's flame, competing for dominance. It was quite a thrilling sight. Chapter 162. The Island Trial 2. Without warning, Ivar stepped forward, wearing the stern face of the war general he truly was. "Temple disciples and future spears of the Empire, welcome to the grand event that will be broadcast across the entire world." Ivar spread his arms as he continued. "I see many faces before me. Excitement, anticipation. Perhaps you wish to make a name for yourselves? Fame? Glory? Indeed, the Victoriad was a chance for temple students to shine. If they performed well, they could be recruited by powerful guilds, or even one of the great noble houses or the church, though the latter demanded blind faith in their cause. But this time, things were different. Don't misunderstand. Soldiers of the Empire, that's what I should be calling you now. You are no longer just students. You are the tools of war for what's to come. Warriors who will, with high probability, fill important roles in the war our empire will soon face." As expected, the moment he said that, whispers filled the crowd. Surely, those watching from behind their screens were reacting the same. But Ivar didn't care. His voice easily drowned them out. "There's no point in hiding it any longer, or rather, no point in pretending ignorance. You all know war is coming, and it might be even closer than we think." Clearly, Ivar intended to use the Victoriad as a way to solidify the Empire's stance. "That's why this time, we'll prepare you the right way, not with childish duels, but with a real test of your survival." As soon as those words left his mouth, a massive screen lit up behind him. There, a 3D projection appeared, 2 large islands hovering ominously. "This time, your final test will take place on these islands." Everyone's expressions turned serious, even those from the upper years like Ellen White. 1 week from now, the temple will be divided into 2 groups, 3 years per island. First, second, and third years together on one side, the rest on the other. The duration of the test will be 1 full month, a whole month, and our opponents would be the second and third years. I muttered quietly to myself, engraving every bit of information into my mind. The true nature of this test was beginning to take shape. Some students complained about the insane duration. Others argued it was unfair to be pitted against higher years. Ivar frowned as he watched their reactions. "I don't understand you people. Imagine you're at war against the enemy. Do you really think they'll only send opponents your age? With the same level of strength? Do you think they'll care about your foolish ambitions?" The crowd gradually began to quiet down. "If you do end up participating in the upcoming war," Ivar continued. There's a high chance you'll find yourself alone and exposed at any moment, under conditions where survival is nearly impossible. That's why, for the next month, you'll be struggling to survive on that island without any supplies. He added coldly, the Ultras were known for frequently launching attacks using nightmare creatures, so both islands have been populated with nightmare beasts hunted by the Empire over the years. Some are weak, while others belong to the higher ranks. Perhaps you might even encounter S-class monsters. A warrior must know when to fight and when to flee. Keep that in mind. In other words, this time we weren't just facing each other. We'd be up against the nightmare creatures as well, on top of the harsh natural conditions of those islands. With a chilling smile, Ivar tried to reassure the terrified temple students. There's no need to worry. You won't die, your equipment will prevent you from suffering any fatal injuries. You'll also be allowed to withdraw. However, I must warn you now, if you fail to reach the required number of points, you won't just lose your chance to qualify for the next stage of the Victoriad. You'll also be expelled from the temple. Keep that in mind. After unleashing all those dreadful announcements, Ivar finally stepped back. Now, your instructors will go over the details. As soon as he said that, a man in his 40s stepped forward, wearing round glasses and a sharp formal suit. Without delay, he began explaining the finer details of the test. The island test. First, participants in this test will be referred to as players. Each player will have a visible number of points displayed above their head. First-year students, 2 points. Second-year students, 3 points. Third-year students, 5 points. The same applies to the upper years, from the 4th to the 6th, with corresponding point increases. Nightmare creatures will also have point values shown above their heads. The stronger the creature, the more points it's worth. Second, players will be equipped with smartwatches containing a full map of the island. To prevent camping in a single location, watches will enforce movement from one zone to another after a certain time period. Reaching zones within the time limit will grant points as well, based on arrival rank. Various missions will appear across the island, offering rewards such as points, and sometimes supplies like food or camping gear, so be sure to check for updates regularly. Third, player point values will shift constantly, depending on their rank throughout the test, so the classifications above aren't absolute. Forming teams is allowed, but only the individual who lands the final blow will receive the points. Upon reaching a certain number of points, players can pay to reveal the location of another player of their choosing. Finally, the top 8 students from each academic year will qualify for the knockout stage of the Victoriad. The rankings will be displayed every 24 hours and can be accessed through the smartwatches. Also, all players must reach the final designated zone, which will be revealed at the end of the test, or they will be automatically disqualified. That's it. A heavy silence settled over the crowd after hearing the full details of the test. Amazing! Everyone was stunned by the sheer intensity and madness of this new challenge. This test was going to be a war in its own right. I couldn't help but feel thrilled as the details sank in. The desire to crush this test ignited within me. As someone who had survived the Eastern Nightmare Lands for a full year, this island meant nothing to me. It felt like that extra bit of confidence I'd been needing had finally arrived on its own. After the full briefing, they moved on to discuss a few formal and educational matters, like the protective gear we'd be wearing during the test, not armor technically, but more like clothing. Lightweight, stylish, and capable of withstanding A-rank blows, but only to vital areas, just enough to prevent instant death. Still, everyone would be at risk of serious injury at any moment. Anyone who sustained a fatal hit would be immediately disqualified, since it would essentially count as death. That, logically, would be the end of their run. With everything clarified, we were finally dismissed. Chapter 163, Demon Valerian. One by one, the temple students left the room, their expressions a mixture of conflicting emotions. Only 8 will qualify. It was Danzo who spoke, seemingly lost in thought. You could say the number of qualifying spots was incredibly low, which made sense. After all, 32 used to qualify in the past. But this time, personal strength and skill weren't going to be the only factors. Luck, and perhaps even external conditions, would play a role as well. The exam was truly difficult, and those 8 seats were far from guaranteed. As Danzo and I exited the hall and stepped into the wide corridor outside, the students quickly scattered. But we came to a halt when we heard shouting nearby, familiar voices. Our eyes met instantly, and without a word, Danzo and I moved toward the source. And what we found before us was a strange sight. There, on the ground, lay Kyle Walker and Jan Dover, both of them classmates of ours. Bruises from heavy punches clearly marked across their faces. Someone had beaten them badly, and it wasn't hard to guess who, especially with the people standing in front of them. That uniform, those blue temple uniforms, Abyss class. Since the Abyss and Elite classes were superior to the others, they had distinct uniforms to set them apart. The closer we got to our beaten classmates, the stranger things became. At first, we thought the Abyss students had ganged up on the two and beaten them down. But looking closely, Kyle and Jean weren't the only ones crushed into the floor. Several Abyss students were down as well, while the rest stood at the back, hesitant and afraid. All eyes fixed on the lone figure standing before them. His build was nearly identical to Danzo's. Muscles bulged even beneath his uniform. His platinum blonde hair and golden eyes said enough on their own. His features were intense. He reminded me of someone I had met not too long ago. That arrogant figure was about to punch Kyle, who had long since lost consciousness. But just in time, Danzo grabbed his wrist and blocked the strike completely. "Hey, that's enough." Danzo's aura surged into his fist, tightening with enough force to shatter the bones of a normal person. Yet the young man didn't seem fazed at all. He simply looked up at the newcomer. "Take your filthy hand off me." "What?" Danzo was stunned by his words, and even more stunned by what happened next. With a flick of his arm, the young man broke free of Danzo's grip and even forced him to stagger several steps backward. Danzo couldn't understand. Or perhaps it's better to say he couldn't process what had just happened. Did I just lose? In raw physical strength? Danzo was known as the strongest tank in the elite classes. And yet, here he was forced to retreat by someone from Abyss. The latter smirked at the sight of Danzo stepping back. "You're better than those other trash. I was gonna send you flying with that move, but you held up pretty well." Suddenly, a powerful aura of explosive lightning surged from the young man's body. "Shall we go again?" Veins visibly popped on Danzo's forehead as his own aura flared to match. "Bring it on, you bastard." The two were moments away from clashing, until I threw myself between them at the last second. "That's enough. You've done more than enough already." I turned toward the blonde-haired young man. "Demon Valerian." Danzo was caught off guard by my words, while a wicked grin formed on Demon's face. "And who are you to decide when I stop?" "Fry Starlight." It didn't seem hard for him to recognize me, and clearly, Demon had no intention of backing down. "Move, Fry. This guy wants a fight." Danzo didn't mind throwing hands, but I couldn't let that happen. I already knew how it would end. Unlike duelists like me, tanks didn't need weapons to fight. Their fists alone were more than enough. They were always ready to go at a moment's notice.
No.
"I already told you. That's enough." I pointed to the students lying unconscious on the ground. 2 from our side and 4 from theirs. And it was worth noting, judging by the injuries, this hadn't been a class brawl. Demon had taken them all down. By himself. But I ignored that fact. People from both classes have fallen. Let's end it here. "You talk too much, Starlight. Didn't I tell you? You're not the one who gets to decide anything here." Demon cracked his knuckles. "Now come at me. Try lasting longer than your pathetic friends." I let out a frustrated sigh. Looks like there's no other choice. I unleashed my aura, and slowly, the killing intent I had gained through past experiences began to seep into the air. Demon's eyes widened in surprise, but that twisted smile of his only grew wider. "Oh? Would you look at that? Haha. Seems like you'll put up a good fight." Just as Demon was reaching peak excitement, Everyone froze as a sharp wave of sound hit our ears. Tell me, will you be able to hold your ground? A single young man appeared behind us, followed by a few familiar faces. Snow! Snow Leonhardt, with his hands in his pockets and golden eyes that shone brighter than anything else. He looked like the fallen prince of some forgotten kingdom. But the pressure he radiated was no joke. In response, the hesitant Abyss students finally took a few steps back, but not Demon. So this is the so-called prodigy everyone's been talking about? Demon took a step forward. Come on. Even if you hadn't shown up, I would have come looking for you. There's a limit to how insane a person can be when it comes to battle, but Demon was something else entirely. He was planning to face the entire elite class on his own, it seemed. I slowly stepped back, realizing this farce was finally about to end. No one moves. Stay where you are. This time, the voice that tore through the air came from someone on a whole different level, the student council president. Ellen White. Beside her stood familiar figures, including the saint candidate, Uriel Platini. Damn it! Demon cursed under his breath, but even he couldn't resist Ellen. Someone who never cared about anyone's background when she took action. If you're so eager to fight, then take it to the island trial, you bastards. Not inside the temple. Ellen let out a long sigh, clearly irritated. Your stupid actions reflect on me. You're like a thorn in my ass. Now, who's going to explain what the hell happened here? After a brief inquiry, to my surprise, the one who stepped up to explain everything was none other than my cousin, Emin Starlight, ranked third among the Abyss students. Watching him play the role of Tattletale for his own class, I couldn't stop myself from chuckling. It was honestly pathetic. But thanks to him, the truth came out. Earlier, there'd been a spat between the Abyss class and both Jan Dover and Kyle Walker, who had mocked them. Later, Demon Valerian arrived. Upon seeing them bickering like old men, he simply incited a fight. But when they didn't respond the way he wanted, he jumped in and beat everyone up himself. After hearing the full story, Ellen dragged Demon off, despite his ongoing attempts to thrash around like a lunatic, while we were left to watch. A real pain in the ass just showed up. Danzo grumbled as he stared at Demon. You should have let me smash his face in. I turned toward Danzo and shook my head. Be careful when you face him. Danzo, he's not an easy opponent. Truth be told, Danzo would have been crushed if they'd actually fought. He raised an eyebrow at me, responding to my warning. I heard you when you said his name, Valerian. But even if he's from the Imperial family, isn't he just another clown from the Abyss? Danzo wasn't entirely wrong. The Abyss class was known as the place for students who didn't possess overwhelming talent like the elite, but who outperformed others through hard work. That's the general belief, but Demon was a special case. And it wasn't me who explained that. Demon can't be categorized as someone from the Abyss. Danzo and I turned toward the girl approaching from behind, Princess Sansa. Sansa! Danzo looked a bit flustered, unsure if he was supposed to bow or something, but she simply waved her hand, signaling him to relax. Either way, Sansa continued her explanation. Demon is the son of the current headmaster, Ivar Valerian, which makes him my cousin. Since the elite classes were divided between me and my brother Aegon, it naturally evolved into a political struggle. A battle for the throne. That's why assigning him to either Class A or B wasn't an option. Doing so would have implied he supported whichever side he joined. And as a member of the Imperial family, he's bound by neutrality. The only viable solution was placing him in the Abyss. I nodded, fully agreeing with Sansa's explanation. She was right. Demon was a beast in every sense of the word. His talent alone could have secured him a place at the top of the elite classes, right alongside Snow. He was a tank with overwhelming power, capable of wielding fire, lightning, and wind alike. A warrior who could fight in any role on any front. Truthfully, had I not written him into the semi-finals of the Victoriad against Snow, he would have reached the final without breaking a sweat. Someone like him was undoubtedly one of the greatest threats standing between me and victory. And speaking of threats, it's been a while, Fry. The biggest one of all stepped forward with a smile. Snow Leon Hart. It has. And you're still as brilliant as ever, Snow. This time, my final opponent wasn't an enemy. He was a friend. Chapter 164. Surrounded by Foes. Fry Starlight's POV. It's been a while, Fry. It really has. I shook Snow's hand. The moment our palms touched, I could feel the hardened calluses that had formed from months of relentless sword training. The protagonist I had crafted so carefully was growing stronger. Perhaps faster than the plot itself. To be honest, I wasn't exactly thrilled about that. But I had no choice but to face reality. The elite students had gathered after what had just happened. Not everyone was present, but I saw plenty of familiar faces. Most of Class B had shown up, while only a few from Class A were here. The most notable among them were Snow and Ghost. Clanna Starlight, my cousin, was also present. Things between us were tense. She flinched every time our eyes met. I did my best to ignore it. I knew perfectly well why she was acting that way. I didn't see Saris or the prince around. Selena was absent too. Not much was said. Most of the talk centered on the upcoming event, the island trial. This time, the test will be comprehensive. It won't be just one-on-one duels. We'll be up against the upperclassmen. Clanna Starlight pointed out the facts. What about forming a team? Among us first years. That way, we'll stand a better chance against the seniors. Her words were clearly directed at Sansa and Snow. The former, an unofficial princess of Class B, had a silent grip on her peers, thanks to both her influence and her connections. As for Snow, he was undeniably the strongest among the first years. With Aegon absent, his presence carried the most weight. Snow was firm as he shook his head. Sorry, but I'm against that idea. Clanna may have expected some pushback, but not an outright rejection. So, she pressed on. Why? The upperclassmen have a massive advantage over us. Won't we just be wiped out if we fight alone? Her argument had some merit, but not entirely. You're wrong on two fronts. Clanna Starlight. This time, it was Sansa who replied instead of Snow. Your suggestion is logical, I won't deny that. But it's useless when it comes to the elite classes. The sharper students already understood what she meant. Danzo nodded in agreement. I completely agree. It might make sense for the average students, those who need to band together to stand a chance against their seniors, but we're the elite. He clenched his fists with fire in his eyes. I want to see how far I can go against them. The second and third years. Most of those present shared his sentiment. Snow said nothing more, but his silence made one thing clear. He was already planning to challenge the senior elite. Sansa nodded, then added, that was your first mistake. The second? This is the Victoriad. It's designed to let individuals shine. Forming a team would be meaningless, since we'll all be competing for points in the end. Whoever lands the final blow earns the points, so you could already imagine the kind of conflicts that would cause. And just like that, the team formation idea was shut down before it could take off. Clanna had nothing more to say. As a side note, I noticed the hint of disappointment on Adriana's face. She had clearly been in favor of the plan. Watching the visible changes in her expression was oddly entertaining. In the end, everyone dispersed, and the stance of the first-year elite was clear. Everyone fights for themselves. We didn't bother waiting to hear the opinions of the prince or the others who hadn't shown up. Their stance had been obvious from the start. They were against it. I slowly retreated alongside Danzo. As someone familiar with the personalities of the elite class, I knew that this decision wouldn't hold true for everyone present. Only time would tell how accurate my assumptions were. Once we'd gotten far enough, I stopped and lowered my gaze. It's time to show yourself, Ghost. Danzo looked confused at first, then jumped back in shock as the darkness beneath me deepened and Ghost emerged slowly from within it. Damn it! What the hell? He hadn't realized Ghost was so close. His reaction was genuine. Didn't think I'd be noticed. Ghost spoke in his usual calm tone, completely ignoring Danzo's shouting. I didn't sense you, but I figured you'd show up like this. I corrected the misunderstanding immediately. The last thing we needed was for the future greatest assassin to start doubting his own skills. Ghost, you bastard. Can't you show up like a normal person for once? It didn't seem like Danzo was going to let this go anytime soon. His blazing eyes locked with Ghost's dead, emotionless stare. It was a strange contrast. Why would I do that? A vein popped on Danzo's forehead at the calm reply. So I don't freak out when you crawl out of Frey's shadow, stupid bastard. I can't let idiots like you notice me when I approach. That would defeat the entire point. I wasn't surprised by Ghost's hostile tone. What shocked me more was how he said it without the slightest shift in his expression. Eat my fist, you creep. Danzo was about to throw a punch, but I restrained him just in time, grabbing him from behind. Calm down, Danzo, he's right. My words were immediately misunderstood, as Danzo barked even louder. What the hell are you saying too, you pansy? Sigh. Just listen. He came like this because what he wants to say isn't meant for others to hear. Finally, after some thought, Danzo calmed down a bit. I sighed, realizing how much noise we'd made just now. Looks like all your efforts went to waste, Ghost. He shook his head. It's fine. I expected his reaction, so I spread my shadow in advance and blocked the sound. Between Ghost and me, Danzo didn't know how to respond anymore. It was kind of entertaining. First, I predicted Ghost. Then Ghost predicted Danzo. This dynamic was getting weirder by the minute. Back to the matter at hand. So, Ghost, I'm guessing you came because of what happened with the Moonlight family, right? The silent assassin nodded. He didn't show it, but I could tell he appreciated how smoothly I guided the conversation. My name, along with this clown's, was erased from the official records. I assume that was done to protect us from being targeted or suspected. It seemed Ghost had done some serious digging. I understood why he and Danzo were hidden. If their names had stayed on the record, people might have suspected they were involved with the Ultras, especially after the truth was twisted and it was said that Baylor had simply gone missing during the battle. Ghost continued, his voice calm, but his gaze carried weight. But your name's still there, Fry. Let's just say, you're not in a good position. What do you mean? Do they think he was behind the attack? Danzo asked, clearly struggling to accept that. What happened in the Paradiso had been complete chaos. It just so happened that Madame A made her move at the exact time I was locked in battle with Baylor and his family. The overlapping events had created this mess. Honestly, if Baylor hadn't been exposed as a traitor, the entire Starlight family, myself included, might have been accused of colluding with the Ultras and launching a joint assault. Still, I suppose luck hadn't completely turned against me. Are there any names I should be particularly wary of? I asked seriously, and Ghost responded without hesitation. There are many, but most are just normal students or radical staff. The one you should really watch out for is a professor. He crossed his arms, recalling the name. Kaiser Moonlight. He's an S-class instructor and a recent addition to the academy. Kaiser Moonlight. I tried to remember if I'd seen him during the event. He's the one in the black suit who explained the test details. Hard to forget him. Or that stupid pair of glasses he wears. Thanks to Danzo's reminder, I pictured him instantly. So an S-class professor might be targeting me, huh? Now I was starting to understand why Headmaster Ivar had urged me to leave. And that was just what Ghost had uncovered. Who knew how many more people were lying in wait for me? I just don't get how those higher-ups think. Fry Starlight, what kind of cursed fate were you born with to draw in this many enemies? Danzo grumbled, trying to imagine what it was like from my perspective. No comment. This was what it meant to live as Fry Starlight, enduring relentless pressure until the very end. I'll try to look into the rest as soon as I can, Ghost said. I'll help, added Danzo. Maybe they felt involved because they'd helped me before. And maybe they were doing this without any reason at all. I appreciated it. But, wait, I stopped them both. I'm grateful for what you've done so far, Ghost. And you too, Danzo. But I'd be thankful if you both stayed away from this matter from here on out. What the hell are you saying right now in your state? Danzo's reaction was expected. Ghost, however, remained silent. Since your names are no longer involved, let me handle this my own way. Don't get dragged in any deeper. I'll take care of my own problems. So, there's no need for either of you to do anything more. What are you? Stop what you're doing, Ghost. You've already risked enough going this far against someone in the S-class. This level isn't for you guys. Oh? But is it for you, Fry Starlight? This time it was Ghost who stepped forward and asked. They weren't on a level where they could go up against an S-class threat. They were just first-year students at the temple. And so was I, which made my reasoning feel completely hollow. I gave a strained smile as the facts dawned on me. Find another light to follow, Ghost. I'm not someone who deserves to be the light you fight beneath. I began to walk away slowly, distancing myself from them. After all, I'm already deeper in the darkness than you are. Hey, wait! Ignoring Danzo's shout, I left the place, leaving them behind. This was for the best. Ghost shouldn't choose me, he should choose Snow instead. Danzo shouldn't get more involved with me, or death would be the only thing awaiting him. I didn't want to ruin the story any more than I already had. That's why I had to move forward on my own. Besides, these relationships, they were like a drug. Getting rid of them was necessary before they dug in any deeper. Yes, this is for the best. With those words, I convinced myself as I wandered among the temple students. Chapter 165. Complete Chaos. Fry Starlight POV. My thoughts were overwhelming. The fight inside the Victoriad, staying alert for any external attacks. It was all too much, especially on the island, where everything that happened would be broadcast to the entire world. One could expect intense surveillance on its grounds. That meant I probably wouldn't be able to use Balerion at all. I tried to think of various scenarios, but my thoughts came to a halt when a girl appeared in front of me. She was staring straight at me. Long purple hair, and sharp eyes resembling those of someone from ancient East Asia. She was unusually tall for a girl. From her face alone, I estimated she was 2 or 3 years older than me. And judging by her uniform, she was also an elite just like me. Fry Starlight. That's me. I replied briefly, ready for anything. She could have been one of the dissenters Ghost had warned me about. But I was wrong. I'm Missandei, 3rd-year elite. I've come to summon you. On whose behalf? Prince Aegon Valerian. The girl responded instantly. The prince wishes to see you now. An unexpected name had just appeared. The Serpent Prince wanted to see me. To be honest, I wasn't exactly thrilled about meeting him. Maybe he thought I was supporting Sansa or something. Sorry. But I'm not interested.
I'm sorry.
I'm busy right now. I continued walking past Missandei with indifference. She frowned slightly, then spoke without turning to face me. The ex who killed Kai Luke. I'm not making a suggestion. I froze in place. No, I was shocked stiff. What did you just say? I turned back toward the girl, Missandei, unable to believe what I'd just heard. You're coming with me now, Fry Starlight. Refusing isn't an option. Missandei's violet eyes radiated with intense light, ready to strike at any moment. But that didn't matter. Aegon had discovered me, far sooner than I expected. Sending this wretched woman to fight me? No, that wasn't his style. He knew I could handle her. Aegon wasn't simple. I was certain he didn't send her here for a battle. No, something unexpected might happen if I forced a confrontation, especially with temple students nearby. Knowing Aegon's true nature, the best decision was, I raised my hands in surrender. There's no need for all this aggression. I'll come with you, Missandei. I approached her slowly. Lead the way. And with that, I was faced with a problem, perhaps the biggest one so far. I found myself climbing a staircase that led to a familiar place. We were inside the elite quarters, on a balcony overlooking the garden. This was where I'd spoken with the prince in the past, where we once shared tea. But this time there was no tea on the table. The atmosphere was gloomy and overcast, strange for this time of year, which was supposed to be spring. There he sat, hands resting on the table, wearing his usual smile. Aegon, As soon as we arrived, Missandei bowed. "I've brought him, my prince." Aegon waved her off with a casual gesture. "Good work. You may leave now." Missandei bowed again before departing. For a moment, it truly seemed like we were alone, but I knew that wasn't true. With a faint smirk, I glanced in the direction she'd vanished, then looked at Aegon. "I didn't know you had such loyal followers among the students." "That's only natural for someone in my position, don't you think?" Aegon answered as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You're not wrong. See? We agree on something. Now sit, Fry Starlight." He gestured to the chair across from him. I pulled it out slowly and sat with caution. In front of me was the prince, and on the table lay a chessboard, fully arranged. But strangely, every piece was the same color. "Are you interested?" he asked, watching my expression closely. "You mean the chessboard?" Aegon shook his head.
No.
"What I'm asking is, are you interested in becoming a player?" "What are you talking about?" I genuinely didn't understand what he was getting at. "You've escaped it, Fry. You've slipped away from the board." He began moving the pieces aimlessly. On closer inspection, there were far more pieces than a normal chess set, and the board itself was larger than standard. "What I mean is, you're no longer a piece. After all, no piece moves on its own. So I ask you, what are you, exactly?" "Player." Now I understood what Aegon meant. By calling me a player, he meant someone who could challenge him, an equal across the board. In other words, the prince had begun to recognize me as an enemy. I gave a dry laugh, dismissing the idea. "I'm just a rogue piece following its whims, my prince. It seems you're overestimating me." "There's no such thing, Fry. And even if your claim were true, pieces that move on their own must be destroyed." "Such terrifying words you speak." "My sister, Sansa." Aegon paused, idly toying with a piece that looked like a queen. "I've heard she's close to you." "Not particularly." "Then what's your stance?" I knew what he meant, but I kept speaking from behind the mask I'd worn since this conversation began. Starlight's position is clear. The family hasn't taken a side, neither with the prince nor the princess. I'm aware of Starlight's neutrality. What I want to know is your stance. Fry Starlight. Silence lingered for a moment before I replied. "To be honest, I'm not interested." An intriguing answer. "So you're not interested in who the next emperor will be?" "Exactly." I confirmed his words. "That's not enough." "What?" Suddenly, a chill crawled down my spine, a sharp sense of danger. "Not nearly enough, Fry Starlight. What guarantee do I have that you won't become an obstacle?" "An obstacle? I told you, I'm not interested in." No, you're wrong." Aegon cut me off. His expression had shifted completely. That wasn't the elegant smile of a prince anymore. It was twisted, something that reflected his true nature. "You've been an obstacle before. You've already ruined one of my plans, and you could do it again. That possibility is real. You're an unknown piece, one I can't read. A pawn? Don't make me laugh." Aegon Valyrian would never allow something that could threaten his plans to remain alive. Sure, I just expressed that I had no intention of going against him, but to the prince, words meant nothing. He didn't trust them, unless he had absolute proof, 100% certainty, that I wouldn't stand in his way. My mere existence would be a risk too great for him. He laughed, burying his face between his arms. "Oh, Fry, my dear Fry, no matter how I think about it, you must die." He didn't hold back. He said it straight to my face. I smiled back at him. "Killing me won't be so easy, will it?" Aegon nodded. Indeed. He'd gained a lot of power within the temple after the last incursion. But he still didn't know what I was hiding up my sleeves, especially knowing I had survived the Moonlight Massacre. If he failed to kill me, and the entire Starlight family turned against him, he'd be risking too much in his current position, both in the race for the throne and in his broader schemes. At least within the temple, I doubted he'd try anything. Besides, I wasn't sure he even took me that seriously. If he did, I'd already be dead. "You're interesting, Fry. I don't know what's going through your mind right now, But even when I mentioned your death, you didn't flinch. Haha. Fry, you really don't fear death, do you? Death? A dry chuckle escaped me as I considered it. Death sounds like a pretty good option, honestly. It would be far more peaceful. Then how am I supposed to deal with someone like you? Your family? They don't seem to mean much to you. And they're hard to reach. He couldn't use Ada against me. She was far out of his grasp, now that she was the current Lord Starlight. Aegon paused for a moment, then smiled wide. You know, I've been watching you closely, Fry. Ever since I suspected you were the ex, I've been searching for someone like you, simple, without ambition, with no real weaknesses. I couldn't take anything from you, not even a little. His twisted words disgusted me, and I began to wonder what exactly he was trying to get at. Then the answer came. But there's one thing you care about deeply. You've hidden it well, but body language doesn't lie. What are you talking about? The Victoriad. The moment that word left his mouth, my expression shifted. For the first time, even more than when he mentioned death. Oh, look at you, Fry Starlight. That's it. Isn't it? Aegon, you? What if I took it from you, then? Even though I doubt you'll win it, what if I robbed you of the one thing you seem to long for the most? I wonder what kind of face you'd make if… Boom! The table exploded into pieces, the chessboard flung across the place. In a flash, my left hand lashed out like a wild serpent, seizing Aegon's throat with terrifying force and lifting him into the air. With a twisted grin, struggling for breath, Aegon muttered through clenched teeth, "Don't kill him." I didn't know when or how it happened, but suddenly, for blades coated in aura were pressed against my neck, even as I still held the prince suspended by his throat. I was surrounded, 4 heavily armored knights, powerful and deadly, but I didn't care. My focus was on one person alone, the prince. He laughed as he stared at me, his face turning blue from the pressure of my grip. He was choking, but he kept laughing. Our eyes locked. I was struggling to hold myself back. I wonder what it is that's making you huff. Wear that face right now, Fry. Aegon wheezed, still trying to get under my skin even in this moment. It's nothing. I'm just thinking which would be faster. My hand crushing your damn throat, or your knight's blades slicing through my neck. At my words, the swords pressed harder. Thin trails of blood trickled down. It was complete chaos. Chapter 166. The first step into the island trial. Fry Starlight's POV. I felt the sting of cold steel graze my exposed neck. The knights surrounding me weren't amateurs. Those blades could cleave through steel, let alone flesh. Yet the damned prince was still in my grasp. Aegon couldn't spew more provocations. His throat had taken enough damage. He struggled faintly, but breaking free from this grip was impossible. Balerion slumbered in my left hand, and that alone made it perhaps the strongest left hand in the entire cursed world. With a single command, Balerion could erupt and reduce Aegon's head to ashes. The prince had gone silent, but the twisted smile on his face still lingered. Even in this position, he was daring me to do it. I wanted to end him. I really wanted to, but death would claim me the moment I did. The Round Table Knights would carve me into pieces the instant their prince fell.
Ide miscalculata.
Expressionless, my eyes sharp with fury, I released my grip and let him collapse, gasping for air. Heh! Fry. Oh, Fry! Who would have thought you could snap like that? He rose to his feet slowly, speaking in his usual playful tone, as he casually motioned for his knights to stand down. I shouldn't have let myself slip like that. I confirmed his suspicions, handed him my weakness, served it on a silver platter. My fist clenched, fighting hard to suppress my emotions. Are you sure about this, Aegon? At his command, the knights reluctantly took a step back. They were still poised, ready to strike the moment I moved. Sure about what? You'll have to be more specific. I have far too many fires burning. His voice was light, teasing, like I was just one of dozens, maybe hundreds of things on his agenda. Perhaps not even in his top 10. But I didn't care. I'd avoided him for as long as I could. But that was over now. If he planned to stand between me and the Victoriad, then he would become an obstacle far greater than Snow himself. Are you certain you want me as your enemy? Aegon's smile widened. You're asking if I'm certain? Do I look like someone who hesitates? Everything I do becomes the right move eventually. That's just how it is. That's who I am. Arrogant as ever. You're free to call it what you like. Don't come to regret it. Aegon reclaimed his seat as if nothing had happened, like our confrontation was no more than casual banter. You're still a piece I can't quite grasp, Fry. For something intangible like the Victoriad to matter so much to you, even though you don't even possess it. I still don't understand what it is you're trying to prove. He leaned in slightly, his voice low and deliberate. But I am curious to see the look on your face when you lose it all. I clenched my fist tighter. You're free to try and take it. PFTTT. Aegon chuckled. You really think you'll survive if I come after you seriously? I didn't respond. I turned and walked away slowly, afraid that if I stayed a second longer, I might actually kill him. But before I left, I gave him an answer. I wouldn't just survive. I'd win. Ignoring the suffocating aura of the Round Table Knights, I walked out, ending my ill-fated encounter with Prince Aegon Valyrian. The Victoriad had just reached its highest level of difficulty. Time passed. Only 1 week remained before the island trial began. The clock was ticking fast. I isolated myself completely, ignoring the academy and its lectures. They were of no use to me now. I had to prepare for what lay ahead, to face monsters like Snow and Ghost, to stand against Demon Valyrian, to confront the faction within the temple that wanted me dead. And now, Prince Aegon, who had gained overwhelming influence within the sanctuary. I was utterly alone. And to survive what was coming, to achieve the impossible, I would have to use everything I had. No hesitation, no mercy. Casting a glance at the open laptop on the desk, those words etched themselves deep into my mind. Final mission: win the Victoriad. Reward: the user will be granted 1 question, and the system architect will be compelled to answer. Failure penalty: the system will be sealed for an entire year. Failure was not an option. Throughout the days I spent in isolation, my mind simulated every possible outcome, again and again to the point of madness. Amidst all that, I noticed those words that still hadn't disappeared. Fry Starlight, dual soul. They were still there. The memories carved into this body should have already vanished by now. So what's going on with this dual soul? Too many questions. I felt like my head was going to explode. And whenever it reached that point, I would grab my sword and continue training. That was my only sanctuary. The countdown had begun. While Fry immersed himself in relentless training, time moved faster than ever. Strategies were drawn. Swords were sharpened. Spears were prepped. Everyone was preparing for the Victoriad in their own way. Snow, gripping his sword tightly as always, shattered every training dummy in front of him. A person like him couldn't afford to lose to anyone. Within the halls of the abyss, Demon Valyrian's body sparked with lines of lightning, his fists leaving imprints on everything around him. A beast waiting to be unleashed. Ghost sat alone in the dark, sharpening his daggers. A girl with white hair, searching for meaning and a new path in life. Elite fighters. Each of them had something to prove, whether to themselves or to the world. Even those who weren't students. In a sealed room hidden from all eyes, a certain group devised their plan to eliminate him. On a table riddled with knives and dagger marks, lit only by a single candle, his image could be clearly seen. Picture of Fry. As always, Prince Aegon sat on his throne-like seat, while 2 older students knelt before him. The first was a well-trained young man with tied black hair. The second was Missandei, the girl who once brought Fry to the prince. Both of them echoed the same report. Aegon nodded in satisfaction. The Victoriad. These unknown factions had all confirmed their target with one voice. Fry Starlight will die during the upcoming island trial. Meanwhile, Missandei and the student beside her confirmed to the prince. Everything is ready, my prince. The entire third year will move against him during the trial against Fry Starlight. So many blades all pointed at a single person. And the awaited day had finally come. Fry Starlight's POV. So it's today, huh? I rose from my bed. I hadn't slept in a while, so I was already prepared. On the desk was one of my sister's gifts to me. The temple provided those so-called armor sets. They looked more like assassin gear. It wasn't real armor, just a robe that covered most of the body. It was equipped with a special mechanism. When hit by a potentially fatal blow, the armor would activate its inner defense system to block it. In exchange, a shockwave would knock the wearer unconscious, resulting in immediate elimination from the exam. The temple did supply a uniform for everyone, but those from great families or guilds were allowed to receive custom armor from their own people. And so here we are. I took the robe Ada had prepared for me. A jet black armor, elegantly adorned. It was extremely comfortable, light as air, and bore the Starlight insignia in a refined design. It regulated body temperature in all conditions and provided excellent mobility. Alongside the sword she had sent, this was the best Ada could offer at the moment. She was incredibly precise. The sword she delivered was a B grade, the highest tier permitted, and matched Balerion in length and specs, the one I was used to wielding. I was genuinely grateful for that. I picked up my laptop and stored it as always. The Balerion tattoo also functioned as a dimensional ring. I could cheat and try hiding a few things inside to make the exam easier, but the risk was too great, so I didn't go for it. The only thing I needed now was my laptop. Wearing the armor and glancing at myself in the mirror, I looked like some assassin from the medieval era. The dark circles under my eyes had grown deeper from all the sleepless nights and overthinking. My white hair, though, remained unchanged. I grabbed my sword and left. Time to move. Temple grounds. Everyone was lined up there. Clad in battle gear, it looked more like we were heading to war than taking an exam. The white robes of the temple were dominant, standing out especially among the crowd. Yet, scattered among them were the distinct armors worn by those from higher backgrounds. I was one of them, which inevitably drew some unwanted attention, but no one dared maintain eye contact with me. Maybe it was because I looked like a fallen prince from some wicked kingdom. Far ahead stood two colossal gates. They glowed with a majestic blue hue, releasing powerful waves of aura. That was our path to the island. Before entering, we were handed the smartwatches that had been previously mentioned. The moment I wore mine, the display lit up. Apparently, the watch wouldn't function unless directly attached to the user's body. It projected a 3D map of a massive island. The island was divided by latitude and longitude lines. From the side, the horizontal lines were numbered 1 to 10. From above, the vertical lines were labeled A to J. As a result, locations on the island would be referred to by their respective grid, like A1 for the top left corner and so on. It was simple and easy to understand. In addition, the watches displayed basic personal data, my physical condition, and my current score, which sat at 0. The ranking board, for now, was completely empty. The first to third years lined up to the right, ready to enter first. The moment we stepped forward, I felt countless eyes on me, but I ignored them. I had expected this, after all. On the other side, the remaining years stood to the left. Before we were sent off, the temple instructors and the headmaster stood before us. Ivar captured everyone's attention with a single word. Students of the temple, you're about to face the first real challenge of your lives. Remember, survival comes before everything else. Sure, this is your chance to shine and to measure your strength, but don't let it become your end. The temple instructors will act independently, observing from a distance in case of emergencies. We're also monitoring the island in its entirety, so the chances of accidents are minimal. Still, never drop your guard. Nothing in this world is absolute. The Empire had gathered most of its top magicians for this event. A powerful enchantment had been cast, covering the entire island. Through it, the events of the trial would be broadcast to the entire world. The broadcast had a one-day delay, allowing the professionals to edit and filter the footage, showing only the most thrilling scenes. So for the next month, the Empire's citizens were promised pure excitement. And we were the fuel that made it all possible. Good luck, everyone. The island trial begins now. With those words, we were finally allowed to rush toward the massive gate. One by one, everyone began pouring in. I moved along with the first years and entered slowly. The moment I stepped forward, a wave of powerful aura from the gate struck me. Then, my feet sank slightly. Instead of the stone floor from earlier, I now stood on damp sand. The sudden shift in environment and climate was disorienting. Just moments ago I had been in the temple, and now I was standing on a shoreline with the sea beside me. To my right, all I could see were towering trees, giants that reminded me of the Eastern Nightmare lands. An endless forest, a beach of golden sand. I wasn't the only one stunned. Hundreds of students from the first to third years were equally awestruck. There was a side rule in place that prohibited combat during the first hour of the trial, so no fights broke out. The amazement lingered for a while, until a sharp buzzing sound snapped us back to reality. A unified notification was sent to every smartwatch without exception. I immediately checked mine. The message was crystal clear. Fry Starlight, proceed to location E6. Time limit, 1 hour. Reward, 5 points for arrival. Additional points for being first. I glanced at the map. My current location was F9. The distance was far. It was worth noting that each student had been assigned a different destination. Still, I quickly realized I wasn't the only one given E6. Others had the same target. And then, without warning, the ground shook.
Aura surgée.
Everyone bolted forward, diving into the cursed island. The earth itself trembled, declaring one undeniable truth. The island trial had officially begun. Chapter 167, Towards Another Hell. Fry Starlight's POV. The games had begun. The sound of pounding footsteps and excited shouting filled the air, as if we were in some sort of chaotic marathon. The temple's army had already started to scatter the moment we stepped into the accursed forest. The towering trees blocked out the sky, and green vines slithered across the ground like serpents. It was a familiar environment, one that oddly made me feel nostalgic. I moved in absolute silence thanks to phantom steps, avoiding contact with the other students as much as I could. After all, they were already causing a ridiculous amount of noise. Nightmare creatures were drawn to certain things more than others. Light and sound. SSSSSS. Only minutes into the island, the vanguard ran into their first challenge. Creatures the size of humans appeared, taking the form of gray-scaled lizards that emitted a foul, filthy aura. They resembled Komodo dragons, if anything. The moment they appeared, the smart band on my wrist buzzed, projecting detailed information. Type: mutated Komodo dragons. Rank: E. Reward: 1 point for every 3 killed. As soon as I finished reading, laughter erupted all around me. What the hell is this? This is the test you've been hyping up? Dragons my ass. They're just dumb lizards. Swords were drawn. Spears, bows, even bare fists. There were a lot of them, these lizard things, but that was it. Creatures like this were nothing but pitiful. Boom! The sound of slicing and slashing rang out. The lizards bled just like us, vibrant, bright red. Everyone charged in with reckless excitement, slashing them down in a frenzy, letting their adrenaline blind them. I silently decapitated 2 of the creatures before they even saw me coming and moved on without pause. They weren't worth much, barely offering any points. They were more of a bait trap than a real challenge. Staying here would be idiotic. And I wasn't the only one who thought so. Many other participants were already moving on as well. For now, my only focus was reaching my designated point. E6. Time passed slowly as I sprinted through the terrain. My running speed was terrifying, and my stamina was top tier. I must have crossed dozens of kilometers already, yet the map still showed me in the same square. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an island. It was enormous. vast beyond comprehension. Where even were we? Were we still inside the Empire's borders? Ding. A sudden notification snapped me out of my thoughts. 1 hour has passed. Students are now permitted to attack one another. So it begins. I scanned my surroundings. No one. I'd wandered off on my own without realizing it. I was completely alone. Realizing that, I didn't lower my guard for even a second. I could feel it. 1 second you're alone. The next there's a blade at your throat. And that wasn't even accounting for the other students. I was sure this island was crawling with nightmare creatures. The smart band wouldn't give any information unless I encountered them directly. So there was no point in searching blindly. I wondered what kind of creature I'd run into next. And I got my answer, in the most unsettling way possible. I heard screams, howling, wailing, miserable, haunting sounds that made my face darken slowly. I erased my presence immediately and hid behind one of the trees. Peeking out carefully, I saw them, creatures with thick gray fur, skulls far too large for their bodies, sunken eyes, and grotesque features made up of torn, decaying flesh. Their hands ended in long claws, and their limbs were unnaturally thin. Some of them were naked. Some of them were covered in tattered clothes that barely managed to cover anything. I covered my mouth, swallowing my dry saliva. I didn't want to see them. I didn't want to at all. I didn't need the smartwatch's warning to recognize them.
Ganados.
Ding. Type Ganados. Rank D. Reward 1 point. I observed them for a moment before moving toward them. The dark aura slowly enveloped my sword, and on the other side they noticed my presence. One after another, they charged at me, rushing toward me like madmen, dozens of them. With a grim face, I swung my sword.
I'm sorry.
I cut through them violently. I didn't want to prolong the fight because I was irritated by the whole situation. 5 minutes. After that, 30 nightmare creature corpses lay before me. This is the least I could do. As the one who caused this, I wiped the red blood off my sword and stared at the bodies around me for a while. I had gained 30 points from this fight. That was a decent number of points. Whether they were Ganados, or whatever they were called, the situation around me made me drift off for a second. And as I mentioned before, on this island, a second spent alone, and in the next second, a giant blade reflected in my face. The aura of burning fire, and that strange young man who appeared out of nowhere, swinging his sword at my face, brought me back to reality. Damn it! Boom! I barely deflected his attack, retreating quickly, but as soon as I did, 2 girls appeared around me, each wielding a pair of daggers. I saw lines of light shooting from their hands. Rapid strikes targeted my vital points. As a reflex, I spun around, defending with my sword, sending a wave of dark aura to push them back. I immediately dashed between the trees as they pursued me directly. Using hawk eyes, I noticed many more of them approaching. This many, and they all appeared to be bigger than me. Something's wrong. Whoosh! Arrows charged with aura flew around me. Meanwhile, I barely avoided the fiery projectiles constantly flying toward me. Every now and then, some of their fighters would close the gap and engage me in close combat. Haha! Look at this. You older students are coming at me in such numbers. Boom! I pushed away a swordsman who had been tailing me, continuing my sprint through the forest. Is my neck that enticing to you? What an honor. Crack. I heard a snap, followed by a grunt. I carefully watched their movements and continued to retreat. There were so many of them, dozens, and all of them were from either second or third year students, most likely the latter. Seeing how agitated they were, it must have been a source of shame for them, chasing a first-year student. So it must be orders from someone higher up, not their own will. With a terrifying grin, dark aura surged around me. So this is how you want to play, huh? Stop, Starlight. There's no point in what you're doing. The older students shouted unexpectedly. We don't want to drag this farce out. Give up, and let us eliminate you from this test. It'll be the worst thing that happens to you. In other words, you want to eliminate me, then leave to finish your test? They were all clearly either regular students or abyss students at best. I had gathered enough information. Now, shall we begin? The moment I passed by one of the trees, something unusual happened. Where did he go? The pursuers were stunned. The prey they had been chasing just moments ago had completely vanished. But that wasn't the case. What do you think you're doing? From above. Boom! A black meteor struck down above their heads. The sword, infused with dark aura, created several paths. One sword, then two, then three, and then an endless array of blades. My hands moved at an insane speed, relentlessly slicing through the bastards. Each strike was lethal, leaving them powerless. While my attacks were blocked, it wasn't by them, it was by the shields protecting them. Killer strike, killer strike, killer strike. Their defenses were shattered, but that only meant they had failed. The shields sent out a powerful shockwave, knocking out those I had struck down. They were eliminated. With a swift motion of my sword, I sliced through the arrows, dodging the various attacks from the wave manipulators. A terrifying smile spread across my face as I walked toward them. What kind of drugs are you on? For people like you to think you have a chance against me. It's true that I don't use Valyrian, but my style, 10,000 steps of shadow. It was ranked SSS, as you know. Don't get cocky. The same giant from earlier who had attacked me with that massive sword appeared. Go home, you fool. With just 2 strikes, the first sent his sword flying, and the second took him down. I walked calmly. I really should thank Aegon for these free points. Take him down. They all attacked, and I rushed toward them as well. The sound of clashing swords filled the air. One of them, enveloped in darkness, overwhelmed all of his opponents. It was almost laughable. Huff. I took a deep breath, leaning against the trunk of a massive tree as I sat quietly. Another hour had passed. It had been 2 hours since I entered the island. I had taken down the third-year students who had been chasing me, 28 in total, 5 points for each of them, plus the points for the nightmare creatures I had killed. I glanced at my watch. Fry Starlight, 170 points. This was better than I had expected. I raised my hand, glancing at the bloodied wound on my right hand, which had almost healed. I had been rushing during the last fight, and an arrow had pierced my hand out of nowhere. Though I had handled it, getting injured like this wasn't ideal. They were all in the C rank, but that was all. They didn't have anything that qualified them to fight me. Still, I couldn't underestimate them. And the injury on my hand was proof of that. But the last chase made me realize something important. I casually drew in the dirt. There are 2 types of pursuers on this island. First, the bastards who want to kill me. They were the extremists from the Moonlight family that Ghost mentioned, and perhaps some of them were from outside that family as well. They wanted me dead, but that would be very difficult since the island is under surveillance. Just seconds after I defeated the third-year students, they disappeared immediately, indicating that someone had transported them away, likely one of the professors or sorcerers. So those individuals won't act recklessly. The bigger problem is that I don't know most of their identities. Secondly, the bastards who don't want to kill me, but want to eliminate me. At least they were sent by Aegon. The latter can't kill me directly because that would mean an uprising against Starlight. So, if he wants to get rid of me, he'll need some kind of trick. Instead, he's playing with me by attempting to crush me. That's why he had the third-year students attack me, and this is probably just the beginning. Aegon has built many strong relationships throughout his life. Most likely, he controls the strongest elites of the third-year students, who in turn control the rest of the ordinary students. Most likely, I will be attacked the entire time I'm here, by stronger individuals, up to the big heads. I don't know what he's planning, but that's fine. Keep sending me those free points, Aegon. I'll play with you as much as you want. Dealing with them alongside the nightmare creatures that some say even belong to the S rank. I've just stepped into another hell. I sighed in frustration as I dashed forward once again. I must be reaching point E6 soon. Chapter 168. When the Nightmare Begins. Fry Starlight POV. After another hour of moving, facing more ganados along the way, and running into a few students, I finally reached point E6. Ding! Point E6 reached. Arrival rank, 23. Points, 5. I looked at the number before me with mild curiosity. 22 people had arrived before me, yet I hadn't seen a single trace of them. It made sense. I'd spent some time dealing with those third-year bastards. Sure, they were targeting me, but finding me in this massive island was no easy task. Not to mention the access points were assigned randomly. Even though I reached my destination, the watch didn't direct me to a new location right away. I assumed there was a cooldown period before the next point was updated. 3 hours had passed so far, so the time limit must be longer than that before the next shift occurs. Suddenly, I heard footsteps nearby. My hand instinctively went to the hilt of my sword. But what appeared before me was something completely unexpected. Finally, a clumsy girl collapsed in front of me, grumbling like someone about to cry. That green hair was hard to forget. Her childlike features and petite frame were unmistakable. Amelia Adderix from Class A. The Saintess candidate slowly lifted her head when she realized someone was standing before her. And in just a few seconds, her vibrant green eyes met my dead black ones. Kaya! With a startled scream, Amelia scooted away from me on the ground. What are you doing? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. She scrambled to her feet in a panic, only to trip again and faceplant into the grass. Oof. Wow. Compared to the chaos I've seen so far, this is actually kind of... sorry. I stepped toward her and extended my hand, and surprisingly, she grabbed it without hesitation. Look at you. Aren't you afraid of me? Amelia rose to her feet, still holding my hand. Should I be? I don't know. That's usually how people react. And your head's worth 2 points, you know. I might attack you. I don't think you will. You gave me your food that day, remember? I didn't really know how to respond. Is that how you judge people? I give you some chicken and suddenly we're best friends. Yep, that's enough for me. Here, consider this a token of my gratitude. Amelia released her power. A pure green aura touched my body. The wound on my right hand vanished without a trace, and the exhaustion from my previous battle faded as well. Holy power! Amelia clasped her hands together and began praying softly. For the Lord of Light. Bathed in a gentle glow, the Saintess candidate looked beautiful. A sight that didn't belong on this island, especially with her praying to the so-called Lord of Light. Here we go again with that nonsense. Still, I appreciated the healing. Thanks. But right after I thanked her and she finished her prayer, Amelia blurted out, "Wanna team up?" Seeing her eyes literally sparkle, I instinctively stepped back. What? A team? Yeah. I'm a healer and you're an amazing fighter. We'd make a great pair. Was this girl trying to latch onto me as a ride through the exam? I laughed just thinking about it, leaving Amelia visibly confused. This foolish girl. She didn't know that staying near me would only bring disaster. I appreciate the healing, really, but sorry, I work alone. But you should try someone else. I'm sure plenty of people would love to have a sweet healer like you. Ah, I see. Amelia frowned and lowered her head, and the moment she looked up again, she was alone. Where did he go? Ignoring the startled Amelia, I left the area. Ding. Next destination. Point H4. Reward. 5 points, with bonus points based on arrival rank. The next target had already appeared. 3 hours since the exam began. The island exam. The clock hands were ticking without pause, and that colossal land had already been invaded by eager students. With the appearance of those weak nightmare creatures, the students gained an unspoken confidence in themselves, a belief that they could conquer this exam with ease. The sky was overcast, warning of an impending rain. Giant trees concealed everything from view. The true nature of this land had yet to be revealed. On the eastern side, a group of students were moving swiftly, racing each other. Easy. Too easy. At this pace, they'd rack up points, maybe even qualify. The thought of making a name for themselves, of standing out, many were intoxicated by such ideas. Me. A team of 3 second-year students froze as distant sounds reached their ears. Despite how easy things had been so far, none of them dared to underestimate what might come next. "Get ready. It's close," said the one leading them. A young man with black hair, wielding a massive spear. Me. Very close. Weapons were drawn. From behind the tree in front of them, they heard footsteps. Dozens of them. Me. Out of nowhere, a terrifying creature burst out, crawling with dozens of arms and legs, rushing toward them with a face resembling a nightmare mask. A round mouth oozed black fluid, and its eyes were sunken deep. "Feed me! Feed me! Feed me!" The creature screamed in human speech, causing them all to flinch instinctively. The crazed abomination charged at them, and at the same moment, a sound appears on screen. Ding! Nightmare creature beige. Class B+. Points 7. Damn it! Attack it! The man in front thrust his spear, but 3 hands caught the weapon and 7 more coiled around him. Harm him! With one bite, the abomination ripped the young man's arm off. Blood and screams exploded all at once. Shit! His teammates attacked instantly, striking the creature's back with their swords. But its hide was too tough, even infused with aura. The monster kept devouring the boy. His other arm was flung aside, then his leg. And just as the thing was about to bite into his neck, the protective mechanism of his armor finally activated, shielding him and teleporting him away, but he vanished without his limbs. The hungry nightmare creature paused in confusion, puzzled by the sudden disappearance of its prey. Feed me, feed me. With its first meal gone, it simply turned toward the 2 remaining students. Feed me. Having witnessed the horrific scene, the 2 ran as fast as they could to escape. But what good is running from a creature with 10 legs? Feed me. No! The maddened abomination caught them both, and the feast continued. What the hell is this thing? Didn't they say they'd protect us? The screaming went on for a while. Far from the carnage, sitting on a boulder and surrounded by a few students, Aegon observed his surroundings. This exam is quite fascinating. The prince spoke to himself aloud, as everyone around listened intently. It's true that the armor provides protection, but it only does so once, and only when the blow is fatal. In other words, if the strike isn't targeting the heart or another vital organ, the armor won't trigger. Even if all your limbs are torn off, the armors are most likely equipped with magic circuits. When they block a fatal blow, the precast spell activates and teleports the wounded student out of the exam. After all, it was impossible for mages to be stationed everywhere to extract the eliminated. That would be entirely unrealistic. In other words, some might face a fate worse than death here. Haha, Uncle Ivar really is insane. Reports kept coming in, and Aegon listened to every one of them. The beige creature had appeared in multiple locations, a monster that devours its victims, boasting terrifying speed and frightening durability. Another beast had a near-human body, but its head was an enormous brain covered in eyes. It was said to move only in darkness and attack the minds of its victims. The smartwatch named it the Brain of Menses. A third creature had surfaced in the southern part of the island, with long legs and even longer arms. Its head was a massive maw with tendrils. They said it tore off someone's head before the armor could even activate. The island exam was finally beginning to show its true nature. "What about Fry?" Aegon asked with a smile. His question was directed at a familiar young woman, Missandei, an elite third-year student. He clashed with a squad of third years, but he defeated all of them. Aegon nodded. As expected. "No need to worry, my lord. Magnus will be moving soon. He'll target Fry once he's gathered enough points. Good enough. It was possible to reveal the location of any participant on the island for a set number of points. But no one had yet reached the required amount to activate that feature. The girl had mentioned Magnus. Aegon remembered him well. After all, he was the strongest in the entire third year. This will be an interesting clash. Let's see how you deal with him, Fry. If you fall at this level, I'll be disappointed in you, because my grand surprise still awaits you at the end. The prince laughed as he continued on his path. It didn't take long for Fry to slip from his thoughts as other matters took priority. The exam was still underway, 7 hours since the start of the exam. Chapter 169, Dominance of the First Years. Fry Starlight's POV. Whoosh. Shadows darted between the trees, swords clashing. I moved with terrifying speed thanks to phantom steps, leaping through the trees and dodging arrows raining down on me. Shards of ice, fire blast, sonic waves. This is starting to get way too annoying. I was being hunted by another third-year team. Suddenly, I stopped and turned toward them. 10,000 steps of shadow, infinite darkness. Darkness wrapped around my blade, forming a blazing black flame. With a single slash, I unleashed a dark arc that devoured everything before me for several meters. They barely managed to block the attack. But I wasn't done yet. Again, and again, the second arc, then the third, and the fourth. I left them completely bewildered. How much aura does this bastard have? Is he really just a first year? In seconds, the darkness of my aura engulfed them completely. They all dropped like insects before me. I took a deep breath before leaping away. SSS class aura, you bastards. As long as my body can handle it, I can keep firing attacks for hours without pause. But I'm no machine. I can't keep this up forever, especially with wounds stacking across my body. They weren't severe, but they'd become a problem in the long run. I had to stop and treat them properly. I glanced quickly at my watch. Over 7 hours had passed since the test began. My destination had changed once again. Proceed to point I-8. Reward, 5 points. Bonus points awarded based on arrival rank. Fry Starlight, 320 points. Thanks to the constant interference from third-year students, I hadn't been able to reach point H4 earlier. At the moment, I was at point G6, still a bit far from my next objective. I had been collecting points at a rapid pace, mainly due to the third years relentlessly attacking me. So reaching the required total wasn't a challenge. What I needed now was a place to rest. Darkness had already begun to fall, and from what I knew, stronger monsters would emerge at night. I wasn't in the mood nor the condition to deal with them. I searched continuously, cutting down anything in my path for nearly an hour. Eventually, I settled on the trunk of one of the largest trees in the area. I didn't need food for the time being, so hunting wasn't on my mind. Instead, I focused entirely on tending to my wounds. The armor sent from Starlight was truly remarkable. The torn fabric regenerated over time, and it possessed properties akin to bandages. It meant my wounds wouldn't worsen, which was all I needed. I examined the sword in my right hand. Despite all the clashes throughout the day, it remained in perfect condition, razor-sharp and ready. Then I looked at my right hand. I'd recently discovered something unique about Frey's body. Not a game-changer, but certainly useful. Before reincarnating in this world, I had been left-handed. Naturally, I assumed Fry was too and started using my left hand without thinking. Balerion had also fused with my left arm, so using it came naturally. But recently, I realized I could wield a sword with my right hand just as well. That revelation changed everything. Now I could use the sword in my right hand while utilizing my Balerion-infused left arm, hardened and nearly indestructible, for defense. Maybe one day I'd even dual-wield. It was the only good discovery in recent times. Next, I pulled out my laptop. No one else could see it, so I didn't bother hiding it. When I checked the system, I noticed something odd. Something that had never happened before. The task list was completely empty. No side quests. No main missions. Only a single objective remained: win the Victoriad. It was as if the system was preparing for something. Whether I won or lost, I was certain something was about to happen. And I didn't want to find out what it was. Right now, the system's features were practically useless. I didn't even want to waste any of my limited achievement points. I put the laptop away. I'd only use it as a last resort. I leaned against the tree trunk as the darkness thickened around me. Up here, shrouded in complete blackness, I was invisible. The sky was overcast, leaving not even a sliver of light behind, but my hawk eyes saw everything. In the distance, I spotted a few glowing dots, flickers of firelight. Some students had lit fires. A foolish mistake. That would only draw the nightmare creatures. I slowly closed my eyes. Not to sleep, just to rest. I've missed this feeling. The feeling of being in the shadow sect. The switch that kept me sane was beginning to tremble again. The madness inside me. It won't be long before he breaks free. Ha! The island point C3. His body wrapped in blazing blue flames. Snow pulled his sword from the corpse of a multi-armed beige. The nightmare creature had been reduced to a mangled, limbless heap, burned and carved beyond recognition.
F-E-E-D.
Me. With one final word, the abomination died. That's the seventh one. Snow leapt away. Unfortunately, he had stumbled into one of those cursed creatures' nests and had been fighting for hours. Anyone else would have fled instantly, but not Snow. He chose to stay and fight. He glanced at his watch. Proceed to point D7. Reward: 5 points. Snow Leonhardt, 275 points. Still not enough. His mind drifted back to that fight, that masked boy from the other day. I need to become a better version of myself. Stronger. Faster. Lightning crackled across Snow's body as he burst forward once more. Darkness had already fallen, but Snow had no intention of resting tonight. As the white-haired youth raced toward point D7, he found himself running alongside 5 others. It seemed they all had the same target, point D7. Among them, a familiar face, a muscular frame and gray hair. Danzo. Snow trailed behind the group. The 5 were attacking each other as they raced toward their goal. Void step. Electric serpents spiraled outward from Snow's feet the moment he took a single step. And just like that, he was far ahead of them all. Snow spun around mid-run, unleashing blazing starfire behind him. A devastating burst aimed at everyone chasing him. You, Snow! Danzo shouted as 6 aura hands formed behind him, wrapping around his body just before the starfire hit. Boom! A thunderous explosion erupted, hurling everyone backward. Snow didn't even look back, he kept running. That last strike had taken out 3 of the 5 pursuing him. Danzo rose from the rubble, face twisted in rage. You bastard! He shot after Snow immediately, but it was hopeless. Snow was far too fast. And just a few minutes later, you've reached your destination. Reward: 5 points plus 20 bonus points. Rank: first. Snow said nothing. He was first. Next point. The next destination hadn't been revealed yet. So Snow shifted his focus to hunting more nightmare creatures. That boy wouldn't stop, and neither would he. Time flowed on. 12 hours since the trial began. Fry opened his eyes, still perched atop the massive tree trunk. All across the island, students suddenly froze as the same notification echoed in their minds. Ding! The first day on the island has ended. It hadn't been a full day, but the trial had started at 12 this morning. Now it was midnight. Everyone's gaze locked onto the next message. The rankings have been revealed. With anxious eyes, every participant opened the leaderboard. Only your own rank and the top 10 will be shown. So it wasn't a full list, just the best of the best. And each player could see only their own rank. 10. Danzo Smasher. First year 190 points. 6. Saris Moonlight. First year 248 points. 5. Jessica Thivenin. second year 260 points. For Magnus Grell, third year 300 points. 3. Fry Starlight, first year 320 points. 2. Snow Leon Hart, first year 355 points. 1. Demon Valerian, first year 400 points. Silence fell. Confusion etched itself across countless faces. The top 3 are all first years? What the hell is going on? An unprecedented turn of events was unfolding before their very eyes. Elsewhere, Fry stared at his ranking, along with the accompanying alert. Fry Starlight, rank 3rd. Bounty on your head, 30 points. Since he had ranked so high, the bounty on his head had risen from 2 points to 30 in just one day. What a pain! Chapter 170. Storms on the Horizon. The Empire, last bastion of the world, protected behind colossal walls, it had kept at bay the monstrous hands that lurked in the dark beyond. Far from the trial island, deep within the heart of the capital, Belgrade, inside one of the massive research facilities near the royal palace, stood a short man, his face worn by time, eyes sunken with exhaustion and sleepless nights. This was the principal laboratory of the Empire's greatest mind, Ashal Eduardo. The famed scholar stood before a vial of dark crimson liquid, the subject of countless experiments and tests. The more he studied it, the more his expression darkened. "Sir, is this?" Another researcher entered the lab, an old man himself, but one who addressed Ashal with sincere deference. Ashal scowled as he tossed his gloves aside. "This is the blood we recovered from the battlefield, where Oliver Kahn fought that creature. During that battle, Oliver had landed a devastating blow on his opponent, Godfrey, unleashing a violent torrent of blood. Strangely, Godfrey had continued to fight as if the massive wound were nothing more than a scratch. But now, with that blood in their hands, look at this." Ashal pointed at the monitor, displaying the vile blood under the microscope. The researcher watched, stunned, as the particles clashed and writhed like living things. "This is..." He stared in bewilderment, while Ashal's voice turned grim. "This isn't human blood, and it's not demon blood either." He began pacing slowly, hands clasped behind his back, weariness clinging to him like a shadow. "It's something in between. Demon blood, typically a deadly poison to humans, has fused seamlessly with blood-bearing human characteristics. In other words, it was as if a half-human, half-demon." Ashal exhaled in frustration, while the other scientist could hardly believe what he was hearing. A human mother and a demon father? Or the reverse? That's impossible. It defied all logic biologically, spiritually, theoretically. Humans couldn't conceive with demons. The very idea was madness. Ashal shook his head and exited the lab, his mind weighed down by the implications. "I don't even want to think about it." Behind him, he left the cursed blood sample, and an image of the tyrant, Godfrey, displayed beside it. For the first time in his life, Ashal Eduardo, the Empire's foremost scholar, was afraid of the truth. The world was shifting, rapidly, violently, and no one was spared from its storms. The holy island of Sikelia, sanctuary of the followers of the Lightbringer, their self-proclaimed heaven on earth. Wearing pure white robes, the devout had gathered in massive numbers, chanting praises to their god. At the island's center stood a towering church, the Twilight Cathedral. It loomed high at the summit, beside the legendary monument where the Lightbringer's revelation was said to have descended. Before the cathedral's colossal doors, 3 men stood, cloaked in majestic aura, watching the masses ascend the stone steps toward them. "The pilgrims will arrive soon," said Bishop Michael Platini, calm and composed. The 2 men beside him nodded in acknowledgement. Joseph Blatter stepped forward, his ceremonial robe flowing as he raised a commanding hand. "Open the gates." Behind him, the massive doors began to creak open, just as the distant chants of the pilgrims reached their ears. "The church's next champion will soon be revealed," Blatter proclaimed, his voice booming with aura. For the first time in 400 years, the chosen one shall receive the will of the Lightbringer. And with it comes the time to bring forth the sword of the sovereign Vermithor, to choose its next master. The pilgrims roared in unified praise upon hearing the bishop's announcement. And the one who shall bestow this divine gift upon the chosen apostle will be none other than the only believer who can hear our Lord's voice. And as the cathedral gates slowly opened, a divine and awe-inspiring sight awaited within. A vast, empty hall, majestic in its silence, adorned with intricate glass ornaments that shimmered in a kaleidoscope of colors and light. At its heart stood a grand structure resembling a shrine. There, seated in solemn stillness, was a lone woman. Her robe, impossibly white, flowed around her like mist, while golden hair cascaded over her shoulders, part of it neatly braided. She turned, revealing piercing crimson eyes that glowed like embers in the shadows. Behind her, a colossal sword lay embedded in the ground, emitting a radiant, blinding light. Many looked on in awe. Saint Euratia and the sacred sword. Without a word, the saint reached out and drew the blade Vermithor, which yielded without resistance. It was a breathtaking sight. Vermithor had long defied the faithful, refusing to be drawn regardless of how devout the hand. Yet now it rose with ease. Bishop Bladder nodded with deep satisfaction. To the Victoriad. There, the chosen hero would awaken. Fry Starlight's POV. 15 hours had passed since the trial began on the Forsaken Island. It was now 3 a.m. I was already on the move. I have a bad feeling about this. I'd been ambushed twice so far, both times by standard third-year students. The elite hadn't made their move yet, which meant they likely hadn't pinpointed my location. No one's gathered enough points to track others yet. Meanwhile, my bounty had risen to 30 points. That made me a prime target. To make things worse, powerful nightmare creatures had started appearing as well.
La la la.
The haunting melody echoing around me left no doubt. The brains of Menses, monstrous nightmares that roamed under moonlight, creatures that assaulted their victims' minds with overwhelming illusions. Their bodies were ordinary, but their heads a massive, exposed brains lined with dozens of blinking eyes. Those brains would split open, revealing gaping maws teeming with writhing tendrils. They were a nightmare to deal with. La la la. That song of theirs, a form of psychic hypnosis meant to pull you into madness. I had no choice but to stay sharply focused, leaping silently from tree to tree, putting as much distance between us as I could. Ding. Monster Brains of Menses. Rank A. Reward 15 points. A little late for that. I scoffed at the smartwatch delayed notification. I was headed toward checkpoint G3. My goal was to collect as many points as possible early, because something told me things were only going to get worse from here. Of course, picking a fight with a Menses nightmare was absolute lunacy. A creature like that couldn't be handled through conventional means. Quietly, I continued slipping past them, avoiding confrontation. Sadly, not everyone had my caution. Many of the other players had already fallen victim to that grotesque horror. And the outcome? Truly grim. If a Menses nightmare managed to penetrate your mind, even an emergency extraction and immediate treatment couldn't guarantee recovery. You wouldn't die, but you'd spend the rest of your life mentally broken. What a miserable state of affairs. The temple might lose more students than ever this time. I ignored the chaos around me and pushed forward. Chapter 171. Clash Beneath the Wing of Night. Fry Starlight POV. Light wasn't necessary. That's what Hawkeye's were for. Moving swiftly through the shadows, I advanced toward my next target, G3. Apparently, I wasn't alone. I sensed two others behind me.
No.
They were beside me, matching my pace exactly. This won't be easy. The auras I felt, they weren't ordinary. Rain began to fall while I was too focused to notice. All of my attention was locked on the players around me. It became clear. We were all headed for the same target, G3. They weren't following me. They were racing beside me. Bit by bit, step by step, we closed the gap between us. Then, swoosh, out of nowhere, a figure burst into view. A massive man with blazing orange hair and arms like tree trunks. His glowing orange eyes narrowed as he launched a punch straight at me. In the pitch-black night, I raised my blade to intercept. The force of his strike sent me flying, crashing into a nearby tree. But I sprang back to my feet, pushing off the trunk and launching myself behind it in one fluid motion. I was ready to counter, but stopped in my tracks when blades of cutting wind tore through the air toward us. Slash! They were razor-sharp, splitting trees and slicing up the ground like paper. The other player continued unleashing them wave after wave. I dodged them with my speed, while the orange-haired one blocked the rest. "Show yourself," the brute roared. His words were wasted in the darkness. But the second figure stepped forward, his body crackling with yellow lightning. "Calm down, brute. I'm right here." That voice. It was Demon Valerian. He charged in without hesitation, forcing us both to react. That was Demon through and through. And the orange-haired brute. I recognized him now. Magnus Drell, 3rd year. He hadn't recognized me yet. I was the only one able to see clearly in the dark. Wonderful, troublesome company. The three of us shot forward, moving with terrifying speed.
Magnus hurled massive boulders at Demon.
Demon evaded swiftly and launched a counterattack, only to be forced back when my shadow slashes obliterated his footing. Magnus turned to me and unleashed a barrage of blows. Dozens of punches came at me from all angles, but I dodged them all. 10,000 steps of shadow mirage. Slash! I cut Magnus 100 times in under a second. He was stunned. Thanks to his resilience, he blocked most of them, but several wounds still appeared across his body. At that moment, lightning split the sky. Demon came crashing down like a lunatic, forcing both Magnus and I to leap away from the blast zone. It was total chaos. A full-blown melee moving at blinding speed. The three of us lunged back in, engaging in a frenzied close-range clash. Boom! Darkness collided with lightning. Our movements blurred within the night. Both Magnus and Demon punched with aura-charged fists, while my sword burned with black flames. After trading dozens of furious blows, the three of us finally pulled back. We now stood in the center of a ruined clearing, surrounded by shattered trees and broken earth. The clouds above shifted, and moonlight poured through for just a moment. In that fleeting light, our eyes locked, and at last they recognized me. Unlike me, who had seen them clearly all along. "Fry Starlight," Magnus muttered in surprise as flames erupted around him. With a twisted grin, his aura surged violently, radiating danger. "Coming to me on your own. You're seriously unlucky, kid." His legs sank into the ground as he charged forward like a human tank. Without hesitation, I wrapped myself in darkness aura and dashed straight at him with relentless swings. The shockwave from our clash unleashed destructive ripples across the battlefield. Flames and darkness clashed, consuming one another, but I found myself being pushed back little by little. "It's useless, boy." The inferno around Magnus intensified, empowering his blows as he punched with insane speed. I blocked every hit with my sword, but the aftershocks of his fists shattered everything behind me. I had to strike back. My eyes lit up with a violet glow as I summoned every ounce of my aura. Magnus was at the peak of rank B. I couldn't afford to fall back here. I was about to unleash a massive counterattack. But I froze when I saw the lightning beam charging straight for both of us. The dark forest was instantly lit up by Demon's lightning assault. "You bastards! Picking fights while I'm here? Ha! How stupid can you be?" Swoosh! No sooner had Demon spoken than Magnus burst through the lightning beam, appearing right in front of him. His terrifying fist swelled with pulsing veins as it rocketed forward. "Stay out of this, you punk!" He was fast. Demon barely had time to react before Magnus' punch crashed into his face. It was like being hit by a missile. Boom! The earth shook violently. Magnus' punch annihilated everything in front of him, ripping through the ground for dozens of meters. He had tried to end Demon with a single blow. But then, the strongest third year's eyes widened in shock. Demon was still standing. His head tilted to the side from the punch, blood dripping from his lips. He looked straight at Magnus with a burning glare. Spitting blood to the ground, he let out a roar that made my eardrums ring. "You call that a punch, you son of a bitch?" Lightning coiled around Demon's fist, forming a blinding spiral of energy. With one blow, he drove his fist straight into Magnus' chest, sending the third year flying through dozens of trees. I was stunned watching Magnus hurtle through the forest. It was almost unreal. "Now that's a punch." Demon darted after him, both arms glowing with explosive electricity. His fists rained down like a storm, each one faster than the last, especially for someone built like a tank. Every hit dug deep into Magnus' body as he was smashed across the earth. Demon was overwhelmingly powerful. His explosive speed came from lightning, his long-range power from wind, his reflexes were razor-sharp, and his physique was blessed since birth. He was almost too perfect. "Don't push your luck with me, boy." Somehow, Magnus managed to regain his stance and began trading blows with Demon again. All I could see were red and yellow flashes clashing violently in the air. One fought with fire, the other with lightning. Neither cared for defense. They just beat the hell out of each other. Demon surprisingly held his own. In fact, he even overpowered Magnus at times. I circled around them silently. The ideal scenario now was landing a clean strike on both and taking them out in one go. But they were already aware of my presence. Magnus, distracted for a moment by me, gave Demon an opening. Demon grinned. "Taking your eyes off your opponent mid-fight? You're the strongest in the third year? Don't make me laugh." Magnus snapped his attention back, only to find Demon's hand pressed against his chest. The other one, open and aimed directly at me. Supreme Art, Twin Dragon Gate. Demon's body lit up, a blinding brilliance, like a miniature sun. In his left hand, the furious head of a lightning dragon. In his right, a mirrored twin equally fierce. The first dragon devoured Magnus, and the second soared toward me. They both roared, engulfing their targets. And in the next instant, lightning exploded, unleashing a wave of pure light that consumed everything. It was pure chaos. I barely survived the blast, thanks to being just far enough from the epicenter. I thought I'd successfully defended against it, only to find Demon standing right in front of me, the winds howling madly around him. Shit! I barely raised my sword in time before Demon's kick sent me flying. I crashed through several massive trees, one after another, until I finally managed to stop myself. Leaning on my sword, I took a quick glance at the battlefield. In the distance, Magnus was on his knees, struggling to stand. Demon's attack had left a serious impact. He'd been too close. As for Demon himself, he had already moved. There, ahead of us, he reached point G3. Ding. His watch chimed with a clear notification of victory. "You've reached your destination. Rank first. Points: 5 plus 20 bonus points. Demon Vale Ryan, 455 points." From afar, Demon glanced back at us with sheer disdain. "Worthless trash," he barked, then leapt away. "Where the hell is that bastard Snow? How many more points do I need to find him?" Apparently, we were never his target. He didn't even bother giving us another look. With a dry chuckle, I stood up again. Things are escalating fast. It hadn't even been 15 hours since the start of the trial, and yet here I was, already knee-deep in this madness. Chapter 172. Clash of the Elite 1. Dark clouds gathered once more as the sky roared. Heavy rain poured over the heads of the temple students.
No sleep.
No food.
No stopping.
Nightmare creatures lurked everywhere, and competitors waited in silence. At this point, surrender almost seemed like the better choice. But no one truly knew what the required number of points was to avoid disqualification. The people watched in curiosity as the broadcast of the island finally began. A thrilling showcase of savage combat, bloodshed, survival instincts, and fierce competition. Earlier, after Demon Valerian's overwhelming display, Magnus Grell rose from the ground, his expression darkening even more, if that was possible, given the midnight hour. That battle had taken place in complete darkness. Their auras were the only source of light. Magnus was furious. Not only had Demon humiliated him, but Fry Starlight had vanished the moment the dust had settled. Fry moved fast. He had taken second rank and slipped away without a single trace. That bastard! How the hell did he slip right past me like that? He could see through the darkness and move silently, making him near impossible to track now. Magnus clenched his fists, seething at the very thought of the arrogant first years. I'll bury them, all of them. The strongest student of the third year began to move again. The test wasn't over yet. 20 hours since the beginning of the trial. The sun had risen, but the sky remained grim, rains refusing to cease. Down below, a girl with violet hair ran frantically. Her round glasses were completely shattered, her face stained with grime and sweat. First year, Adriana Higthorn was being chased by 4 nightmare creatures, beasts with scythe-like arms and far too many legs. Fry Starlight knew them well, but Adriana didn't. Ding! Scythe Wraiths. Rank? 6. Points 3. The alert rang as Adriana screamed, thrusting her spear behind her in panic. Aura of wind burst from its tip as she struck, stabbing into the bodies of her pursuers. But they were difficult to handle. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. She wasn't used to facing anything like this. A bookworm who only knew comfort suddenly dropped into a world like this? It had only been 20 hours. But for Adriana, it felt like a whole month had passed. And worst of all, she couldn't even surrender, not with the risk of being ripped apart by the scythe wraiths before her armor's protection activated. She had almost lost all hope. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of pursuit behind her stopped. Adriana slowed, breathless, confused, unsure of what had just happened. She turned back slowly, only to witness a bizarre sight. The scythe wraiths had been impaled from beneath, black thorns erupting from a massive shadow under them. The dark spikes had pierced their bodies in several places, leaving them dead on the spot. That ominous black aura wasn't comforting at all. But the voice that followed was, "So it was you after all, Adriana." Adriana spun around instantly. Walking calmly from between the trees was a familiar girl, dressed in elegant black with golden embroidery, bearing the crest of House Valerian. Princess! The massive shadow retracted swiftly, shrinking and vanishing beneath Sansa's feet. Adriana threw herself into Sansa's arms, hugging her tightly as the latter gently patted her back. It's okay. You're safe now.
I'm sorry, Sansa.
I didn't know what to do. They were chasing me all night. Sansa said nothing. She simply comforted Adriana in silence, gazing at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. But she was still the same princess. Soon after, Sansa led the trembling Adriana to a safer place. A large tree, wide enough at its center to resemble a shallow cave. Let's stay here for now. The interior was empty, but it was far better than standing in the rain. From then on, Adriana couldn't stop talking. She poured her heart out, one word after the other. She trusted the princess deeply. Sansa was her friend, and had saved her more than once. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing this singing. It was beautiful but terrifying. So I ran. And then, the details were endless. A bit too much, but Sansa never once looked annoyed. She just listened with a soft smile. I see. That must have been really tough on you. Adriana nodded and lowered her head. You're amazing though. Sansa, you're so strong. And you still look fine even with everything going on out there. I wish I could be like you. Like me, huh? Sansa murmured, a flicker of something passing through her eyes. Did Adriana know anything about her? To want to be like her? No. She didn't know a thing. Not a single thing. The princess smiled and stood up, glancing outside. Would you like to form a team, Adriana? I don't think you'll be able to finish this test alone in your current state. Adriana's face lit up immediately. Can I? Sansa nodded. But I should warn you, I don't plan on joining the finals. I won't be moving around much. Staying with me means giving up your shot at qualifying. Adriana shook her head quickly. That's fine. I never expected to qualify in the first place. Very well then. I'll be in your care, Adriana. Sansa smiled radiantly at her. A practiced, perfect smile she'd rehearsed countless times. In return, Adriana awkwardly nodded, cheeks slightly flushed. Yes, yes, I'll be the one under your care. Thank you so much. The mood between them was warm and gentle, until a violent bolt of lightning struck nearby, briefly illuminating something that made Adriana leap to her feet, gripping her spear. Princess! Behind you! Sansa turned around and saw a figure standing at the tree's entrance. A girl with blazing red hair, black earrings dangling from her ears, and crimson eyes narrowed in a stern glare directed at Adriana. Sansa, however, smiled and stepped between them. Jessica, so you've arrived. Jessica frowned, her eyes never leaving Adriana's. Princess, who is she? Oh, that's Adriana. She's my classmate and a friend. No need to worry. If you say so, but be careful. Sansa nodded cheerfully and motioned for Adriana to come closer. Looking more closely, Adriana recognized the girl standing before her. Jessica Thivonen, the strongest of the second years. Someone impossible to ignore. Adriana sat beside them quietly, not daring to speak, especially given the hostility Jessica made no effort to hide. The entire time, Jessica and the princess discussed various matters, mainly the current state of things on the island from her perspective. The first years this time around, they're completely different. I've never seen this many monsters in a single generation. Jessica sighed before standing to leave. Her words carried weight. After all, the current top 3 in the rankings were all first years. She reached for her sword just as her smart band chimed. Ding! The next location had been announced. With your permission, Princess, I'll take my leave now. I'll check in on you whenever I end up near your area. So please, be careful. If I don't come myself, someone else from my class will. Jessica, that's already too much. Just focus on your exam. Sansa spoke with a slight frown. As you wish, my princess. Then I'll see you later. Yeah. It didn't seem like Jessica was going to follow orders anytime soon, but Sansa didn't say anything. Jessica had been like this ever since she managed to recruit her some time ago. Whoosh! Jessica vanished, but not before casting a warning glance toward the still nervous Adriana. That left the two girls alone. Shall we go look for something to eat, Adriana? Adriana nodded hesitantly. She was still visibly shaken, but she followed the princess anyway, clutching her spear. Meanwhile, Sansa strolled casually through the forest as if she were back in the rose gardens she loved. Not the nightmare-infested wilderness they were in, like a lost princess wandering through the darkness. Chapter 173, Clash of the Elite, 2. Far to the west. A full day had passed since the start of the exam. A young man was running like mad. He was terrified, his body covered in wounds, his weapon lost. And if you looked closely, it was clear those injuries had been inflicted by a human weapon, not a nightmare creature. The young man, a bit older than most, screamed out, "Stop! Why are you chasing me?" He was in full panic. What did I even do? He kept yelling, but no answer came. In fact, there didn't seem to be anyone at all. But that wasn't true. In a blink, a shadow swelled beneath his feet. From that black void, a young man emerged, jet black hair, with eyes just as dark and terrifying. Ghost grabbed the guy immediately, dragging him into the darkness as the latter screamed. Darkness swallowed them whole. Where am I? The boy was trembling in fear. Ghost held him tight, a dagger pressed to his throat. I won't repeat myself. You better answer right away. Understand me? The boy was frozen. What do you want? Fry Starlight. The atmosphere changed instantly at the mention of the name. What are you and your group planning? What's your objective? What are you hiding? The boy, clearly a third year and part of the extremist faction targeting Fry, shifted completely once Frey's name was brought up. Death to that bastard. Ghost immediately threw him to the ground. Seems like you don't understand your position. Ghost stepped toward him again. You're inside my shadow now. A space cut off from the outside world. No one out there will see or hear what happens in here. His voice was cold. Look at me. I'm an assassin. I can pluck your damned eyes out one by one and torture you. And trust me, your stupid shield won't activate. So think very carefully before you speak again. Ghost's presence was suffocating, and the terrified boy was already trembling violently. But still, he didn't back down. You bastard. And Fry Starlight too. You fool. You don't value your life. Stab. Huh? Ag. The boy's scream tore through the void as Ghost drove his dagger into his left eye. Blood streamed down the young man's face like a waterfall. I don't understand why you people make things so difficult for yourselves. Ghost muttered in frustration as he pulled out the red eyeball. How much do you need to bleed before you talk? Is the Moonlight family really this blind? He was clearly irritated. It showed in the way he spoke more than usual. Meanwhile, the other young man screamed in agony. Damn you! Damn you! Damn you! It hurts! It hurts! It hurts! Ghost kicked him hard in the face. Shut up. I haven't even started yet. Why? Why are you doing this? Blood mixed with tears as the boy sobbed violently. Both my parents died in that attack. I lost everything. All because of the Ultras. He broke down completely. They wouldn't have come if it weren't for that bastard Fry. He's working with them. Ghost's expression darkened the moment he heard those words. You actually believe that nonsense? But the young man wasn't finished. You're working with him too. Ha! You're all gonna die. All of you. Fry won't leave this island alive. The boy laughed maniacally. He won't make it out. The elders will kill him. Then they'll come for you too. You'll all die. The elders? D. Slash. Ghost cut through the boy's neck with surgical precision. His blade severed the carotid artery, ending the young man's life in an instant. He didn't even give his armor time to activate. Ghost's face was grim as he silently stepped away. The elders. What exactly was that man talking about? Annoyed, Ghost continued his hunt, crossing one more off his list. All except for the instructor he couldn't reach. On this island, the assassin was far more terrifying than any nightmare beast. Fry Starlight's POV. 2 days since the start of the exam. Ding. Rankings updated. I glanced at my wristwatch, exhaustion written all over my face. I've been moving like a madman for the past 2 days. When was the last time I pushed myself this hard? At this point, getting hunted by third years every time they saw me had become a daily routine. Maybe I'll just eliminate all of them before the month ends. It was getting irritating now, especially since their elites had started to appear. One-on-one, I could handle them easily. But when they ganged up on me like this, it got tricky, and the new injuries on my body were proof of that. I needed to find a way to stop this. The exam was far from over. With a tired expression, I checked the updated leaderboard. 10. Dawn Polaris, 460 points. 5. Jessica Thivinen, 640 points. 4. Magnus Grell, 700 points. 3. Fry Starlight, 780 points. 2. Snow Lionheart, 850 points. 1. Damon Valerian, 870 points. You can now spend 500 points to locate a participant of your choice. Seriously? Snow and Demon, what the hell are they on? I've been fighting like a maniac for 2 whole days, and they're still ahead by that much? Trying to compete with monsters like them is pure foolishness. Right now, I just need to make sure I qualify. I took a deep breath and surged forward, cloaked in the aura of darkness. All that matters is that I'm the one who wins in the end. The students' suffering was entertainment for others. The events of the island were now being broadcast across the entire empire. People cheered for their favorite champions. The fierce battles between students became a breathtaking spectacle to their eyes. Wow, Snow Leonhardt is insane. Did you see how he took those things down? But demons still ahead. Oh, and Frey's amazing too. Citizens discussed everything in taverns and cafes like it was some kind of football championship. Even the higher-ups joined in. The headmaster observed everything with keen interest, surrounded by a group of instructors. Your son is truly something, Headmaster Ivar. Just as expected. Indeed, the instructors praised their superior, though he remained stern. He still has a long way to go. The others didn't argue. Pleasing this man was nearly impossible. But the first years this time are strange. They've completely overshadowed everyone else. Maybe we should have sent them to the other island instead. Haha. One of the instructors laughed. Looking at the island where 4th to 6th years had been sent, things there were far worse. The battles were on an entirely different level. Ellen White had blown up an entire mountain simply because it blocked her path to the objective point. The Saintess candidate Uriel Platini had cleansed most of the nightmare beasts in her area. The monsters from the other student council. It was pure chaos over there. The instructors kept debating the situation nonstop. Meanwhile, the headmaster continued watching. His gaze focused more intensely on certain individuals than others. Among them, isn't that Fry Starlight? One of the instructors pointed out. He's doing great. But unfortunately, the man shrugged. His talents only ranked A. I doubt he'll go much further than this. Ivar said nothing. Talent ranks and aptitude limits. Those were seen as absolute truths. What a shame to have someone like Fry buried beneath a trash-tier talent. That's probably what he thought. Of course, he had no idea that Frey's talent had already changed. If he did, that stern face of his would have collapsed into something else entirely. The island trial was still far from over and promised much more to come. Chapter 174. Clash of the Elite 3. 4 days had passed since the island trial began. The rain hadn't stopped for a moment, and the faces of the surviving students had started to change, little by little. They could no longer function on aura circulation alone. With no clean water, no proper meals, and barely any sleep, many temple students were starting to break down. Thankfully, scattered across the island, red-marked zones began to appear, temporary missions with strict time limits. These missions didn't grant points, but instead provided supplies to those who managed to complete them. Dimensional rings stocked with up to 3 days' worth of rations. Naturally, those zones became a top priority for many. At one such mission zone, a group of students rushed toward a lone instructor standing calmly with both hands behind his back. Upon reaching him, he issued the challenge. Land a single hit on the instructor, and you pass. Of course, the missions weren't meant to be easy. Hitting an S-rank instructor was no small feat. One by one, the upperclassmen tried, but none of them even touched the instructor's shadow, let alone his body. The other mission sites were equally difficult. The temple had no intention of handing out supplies without a test of worth. And the instructors? They didn't go easy on anyone. Eventually, a heavy silence fell. You could see the hopelessness etched into the students' faces. For days, just 4 days had brought them to this broken state. Let me try. The voice rang out after everyone else had given up. A strange boy stepped forward, black hair and crimson-red eyes. The instructor welcomed all challengers without discrimination. He was a middle-aged man with a rugged face and thick beard, his movements razor-sharp. The boy slowly drew his sword, locking eyes with the instructor as he advanced. Then, without warning, he lunged. His sword swung with a rhythm that felt oddly familiar, aiming straight for the instructor's neck. The instructor, unimpressed, tilted his body lazily to dodge. For a brief moment, he couldn't hide the disappointment in his eyes, until, at the last second, The sword's path shifted and ignited in flames. The strike aimed straight for the instructor's head, forcing him to leap back, just barely dodging it. The boy was already in pursuit. His sword moved like an extension of his limbs, a terrifyingly fluid style. Even the instructor's expression shifted into subtle admiration. "Name yourself, boy," the instructor asked as he continued evading. "Dawn Polaris. Elite class, first year." The instructor nodded while dodging expertly. It was worth noting he never counterattacked. Eventually, even Dawn's overwhelming swordsmanship, the best in his entire year, failed to touch the instructor. The man began to lose interest. But then Dawn made an odd move. He threw his sword at the instructor, an amateur's mistake it seemed. "Abandoning your weapon? A foolish move." The instructor dodged easily, only to feel a stony hand rise from the ground behind him, grabbing the airborne sword. "So that's what you were planning." It was a clever trick, but S-rank eyes could read through something like that. The instructor braced to dodge the incoming strike from the stone hand, but it didn't swing. Instead, it tossed the sword high into the air, directly above him. By the time he realized it, Dawn was already in midair. With acrobatic precision, he flipped through the air, then kicked the sword out of its hilt. The blade shot downward like a meteor. The instructor dodged barely. The sword nicked his cheek before slamming into the ground with incredible force. Stunned, the instructor reached for his cheek. A thin line of blood greeted his fingers. He couldn't believe it. Dawn landed gracefully in front of him, then pointed toward the dimensional ring. "You've got something that belongs to me." The instructor smiled and nodded in approval. "Good job, take it." Dawn grabbed the ring and wore it without hesitation. On the other side, the instructor chuckled with a menacing grin. "I suggest you run, kid. The hungry dogs are already circling." Dawn immediately unsheathed his sword, turning toward the students behind him. "He won. The ring. Give me the ring." Stealing it from a first year is much easier than facing the instructor. The hungry students had their eyes set on Dawn. He twirled his sword, fully aware of the situation. "Looks like the job's not done yet." Dozens of students launched themselves at him. But Dawn didn't falter. His extraordinary talent, Weapon Master, was overwhelmingly effective. When it came to swordsmanship, even Snow wasn't on his level. Unless his opponent had something truly unique up their sleeve, they wouldn't pose much of a threat. Beneath the pouring rain, Dawn wiped out a wave of students ranging from the first to the third years. He let out a sigh and walked away. "At least now you won't go hungry." Dawn marched off with a weary expression. He had another gift, a talent that always helped him survive, no matter the odds. That instinct, that sixth sense he was born with, it had been warning him constantly. Something is coming. At this point in the exam, he was the only one who could feel it. The elites were performing astonishingly well. An exceptional swordsman was monopolizing every challenge and mission. A fierce spearman from the first year had been on a non-stop rampage since day one. A wave controller wielded ice so fiercely, it was said she altered the island's very environment. The trio leading the scoreboard. Just what's going on with the first years? They were monsters in every sense of the word. As days passed, the conflict only intensified. 1 week since the island trial began, the number of participants had dropped to less than half. Only the most brutal remained. Boom! A powerful explosion shook the massive island. Above a mountainous region, Demon Valerian ascended with terrifying speed, followed closely by several students and nightmare beasts alike. They were winged creatures with massive crow heads and thick black feathers. Ding! Nightmare beast. Crawler. Class C. Points 3. Demon slammed into the wall as violent winds spiraled around him, forming a raging cyclone. The storm winds swept away everyone following him, hurling them off the mountain as he continued his climb unhindered. Upon reaching the summit, Demon leapt forward, lightning crackling between his arms, fusing with razor-sharp wind blades. He then opened his palm toward the massive crawlers, as if inviting a lady to dance. From that hand, arcs of lightning sliced through the air, striking the flying creatures' heads with surgical precision, turning them into decapitated birds. Under the grim island sky, tainted blood fell and mixed with the rain. Ding! You have reached your destination. Rank 1. Points. +5 base +20 bonus. Bounty on your head. 230 points. Demon didn't flinch and charged forward once again. He had been on the move for days, searching for him, searching for Snow. The latter hadn't rested either, not since day one. Slash! Snow's blade cleaved through Ganados one after another as he stormed through their ranks. Waves of blue fire erupted endlessly. His presence was overwhelming. His watch had directed him to target point B5, and he was on his way now. Points on your head, 220. Snow had been hunted relentlessly due to the massive bounty on him, but he had slaughtered every single pursuer. His golden eyes still gleamed as brightly as they had on his first day on the island. Suddenly, Snow leapt high, dodging a stone spear that exploded where he had just stood. With a quick glance, he spotted a girl with blazing red hair charging toward the same point. It was Jessica Thivenin, the strongest among the second years. Void step. Whoosh! In a single move, Snow appeared in front of Jessica like a phantom. Where do you think you're going? Conjuring a storm of blue fire around his blade, Snow slashed downward at Jessica, who blocked the attack with a crescent-shaped curved sword. She staggered a step back, but moved her fingers in a strange pattern. In the blink of an eye, an invisible force struck Snow, hurling him backward. This, gravity? Correct. Jessica smiled as she kept pressing Snow back. For now, I'll be taking this point from you. Snow said nothing, because the gravitational pressure restraining him had vanished, leaving Jessica stunned. What? Why the surprise? Snow pointed his hand toward Jessica, and the gravity reversed, slamming down on her, catching her completely off guard. You're not the only one who can manipulate gravity. But he wasn't done yet. Void step. He instantly appeared in front of his opponent again. This time, he unleashed Starforce, his strongest weapon. Jessica responded immediately, raising her guard, but Snow moved with such speed that afterimages trailed behind him. His sword carved brilliant arcs through the air as he exploded into her defenses. And like shattering glass, cracks began forming one after another. Jessica felt dread creeping into her bones. All she could do was defend. And after dozens, hundreds of exchanges, Jessica collapsed to the ground, her sword flying from her hand. Snow drove his blade into the ground beside her face as she gasped for air, her body soaked in sweat and rain. Thanks for the duel. With his golden eyes, he looked down at her from above. Jessica didn't know what to say. He was completely unscathed. Even his breathing was calm, like he'd just been out for a stroll. She hadn't simply lost. She hadn't even stood a chance. Snow didn't eliminate her, since she hadn't tried to kill him during the battle. So he simply turned away and continued toward the next checkpoint. That white-haired monster wasn't holding back anymore. The fact that he no longer wore his ring was proof enough. It was as if he were declaring his presence to the world, uncaring of what might come for him in return. Chapter 175, Nightmare of Menses. Fry Starlight's POV. Bounty on your head, 200 points. Ha! I took a deep breath, gripping my sword tightly. A pounding headache had followed me for the past 2 days. I wasn't alone. All around me, dozens of them, and they weren't just regular third years. Many were from the elite. I'd been hunted down relentlessly for 2 whole days. Magnus wasn't among them this time. But what I got instead was just as troublesome. I looked at her, that filthy woman, and then at the army surrounding me. The rain hadn't stopped for even a second. I stuck out my tongue, letting the droplets moisten my dry throat. After such an intense chase, I was reaching my limit. You sure run well, Fry Starlight. I've never met anyone so stubborn. It was Missandei who spoke, Egon's subordinate, looking down on me with disdain while I gave her a tired smile. I think you guys are more stubborn than me. Even after defeating so many of them, they just kept coming. Let's end this farce. Missandei, second strongest among the third years, and with this many on her side, fighting them in my current state would be tough. Sure, I could win, but it would cost me far too much. I had no intention of fighting in the first place. Missandei began to manipulate the threads between her fingers. Those steel nails. The spool wrapped around her arms. She controlled the threads with the wind. Her combat style was truly one of a kind. She wove a giant spider cocoon around us, attempting to seal off any chance of escape. From all sides, the other students began slowly advancing toward me. Looks like you've finally accepted your fate, Fry. Yeah, I accepted it. A long time ago. I raised both hands in surrender. I've got no desire to fight. Missandei frowned. She clearly hadn't expected this response after 2 full days of chasing me. Take him out. She didn't want to prolong things. Something about this situation clearly made her uneasy. One of the students stepped forward and attacked me. His sword slashed clean through, cutting me in half, but what he struck wasn't me to begin with. Ha! Missandei was stunned, because what appeared in my place was only an illusion. La la la. The singing began. Those creatures sang gleefully. Night had fallen and the melody grew stronger. From those brains, the eyeballs emerged. La la la. The third year's expressions darkened as they saw the dozens, no hundreds, of Menzi's nightmare creatures surrounding them. This was their nest. And now the illusion had fully taken hold. Perched atop a tree in the distance, I watched it all unfold. Missandei had woven the trap herself. Trapped inside her own spider cocoon, surrounded by hundreds of Menzi's nightmares. Above them, my eyes shimmered with a faint glow. Skill, ascension. That skill rendered me completely immune to all forms of mental attacks. During the early days of the exam, I'd discovered this place. The lair of those creatures. La la la. A single Menzi's nightmare's illusion can be resisted. Maybe even 2 or 3. But when illusions come at you from this many, it's nearly on par with the Mist Stalker itself. Unless you're prepared in advance and have strong resistance, you won't even realize you've been trapped. Fry Starlight. You bastard. What did you do? Missandei screamed, as the nightmares lunged to attack. What did I do, you ask? Simple. I led you step by step, straight into their nest, without you even noticing. Your intense focus on me made it all too easy for the Menzi's nightmares to pull you into their illusion. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Missandei cursed fiercely, as if her mind was being stabbed by a filthy blade. You're going to get us killed. There's no way we're getting out of this alive. She screamed, lashing out wildly. She had already fallen victim to the nightmare's delusions. These mental attacks might even leave her mentally crippled in the future. A fate worse than death. Complaining now after all that chasing earlier? Your hypocrisy isn't even funny. One by one, they all fell prey to the Menzi's nightmare. La la la. The melody of death played on. Relentless. Missandei, of all people, screamed the most. The exact opposite of her usual calm. Now only one thing remained. To be devoured by the ravenous minds. But their armor would protect them. And sure enough, critical hit, critical hit, critical hit. They were saved. But they didn't get teleported. Some of them were already being devoured by the Menzi's nightmares. What's going on? Confused beyond belief, I watched as the temple disciples were wiped out. The teleportation spell had failed. After observing for a while, I finally realized what was happening. The nest of the Menzi's nightmares. The illusion cast by those creatures. It was like magic. It was overwhelmingly dense because this was their den. And so, it blocked the signal. They couldn't be transported. The power of the Menzi's nightmares was interfering with spatial magic. In other words, they're going to die. La la la. I watched with a bitter expression. They were going to die because of me. Many had already begun to be consumed. The Menzies nightmares devoured their victims slowly, forcing me to witness every moment as limbs were torn apart and bright red blood spilled endlessly. I remained silent as I watched. Sadly, I won't be able to save you. In truth, could have if I had used Valerian. But if I did, I would be disqualified. Between their lives and the Victoriade, the scale was unfair. I wasn't a hero, nor a noble man. I was just someone trying to return to his world. With a grim face, I turned away. I had already given up on them. And then, boom, an overwhelming force surged from the distance. It was fire, a fire greater than anything I had ever seen. It swept across me, the Menzies nightmares, the students, the trees, the rocks, the ground, everything within a kilometer radius. But it wasn't hot. I didn't feel a thing. It was so cold. I felt like I was dreaming, or maybe I had fallen into another of the Menzies illusions. But no, that wasn't it. Down below, the Menzies nightmares burned to death. That same fire didn't touch the students. That level of control. What's going on? A flame that burns what it wants and spares what it wants. But thanks to it, many of the students were saved. The fire only lasted a moment before it vanished. I stared in awe at the scorched land around me. The tree I had been standing on moments ago was completely gone, and the one responsible stood before me. His presence was overwhelming. It reminded me of my time with Ivar Valerian. His brown hair and that elegant black cloak. Those burning crimson eyes lighting up his youthful face. At last we meet, son of Abraham. The man spoke with a radiant smile as the void erupted around him. It was Phoenix. Phoenix Sunlight. Chapter 176. The True Trial. Fry Starlight's POV. Professor Phoenix, the greatest prodigy of the previous generation, now stood before me. Phoenix stared silently at the scattered students of the third year around us. Some were already dead. Others had lost limbs, severed arms, half-bitten necks, spilled entrails lying next to torn open bodies. Those who survived were mentally broken. How dismal! Phoenix wondered if his intervention had even been necessary. As for me, I showed no reaction. Will this affect my exam? I asked what had been on my mind from the beginning. He shook his head. It won't. It'll be considered part of the trial. The teleportation magic resumed now that the Menzies nightmares were dead. The bodies vanished, leaving only blood and filth behind. Phoenix turned his glowing eyes back to me with a faint smile. Fry Starlight, that was a devilish plan you used against them. Was he watching from the start? I couldn't gauge his tone, so I responded cautiously. I simply used whatever I had to win. Phoenix nodded. So you rely on cold logic, doing whatever it takes to come out on top, huh? Truly, you resemble your father. It was the second time he'd mentioned that man. Abraham Starlight, my father. Did you know him? No. I was just a foolish child when Abraham left this world. We walked together, moving away from the scorched nest of the nightmares. Then how can you say we're alike? I'd be lying if I said I wasn't bothered. Because Abraham wasn't my real father. Not my real family. My real father was somewhere far from this world. So no matter how great the man was, I didn't want to be compared to someone I'd never met. We were strangers, nothing more. Phoenix looked up. The rain had stopped, but thunderclouds loomed above, ready to pour again at any moment. I watched with interest as Phoenix gathered a tremendous amount of aura between his thumb and middle finger, igniting his fingertips in flame. And then, without warning, snap, he snapped his fingers, unleashing a fiery blast that shot up into the sky. I stared, astonished, as the fireball pierced the clouds, revealing a starlit sky surrounding the moon. The explosion drew countless gazes, but Phoenix didn't care. He just stared at the stars above. The clouds would soon return, but for a moment, I fixated on that sky I hadn't clearly seen in a week. Abraham was like a star, always up there. Phoenix spoke, recalling memories of his childhood. A star so bright it outshined the Sunlight family and the Emperor himself. What do you think a child growing up under that brilliance would feel? He chuckled, his face showing an expression I couldn't read. Of course, I admired him. He was my inspiration, the goal I set before me. No, it was more than that. I was obsessed. I was stunned by what I was hearing. Right now, Phoenix didn't look like an SS rank monster. He looked like someone my age enjoying a chat about his idol. The way he talked, like a kid talking about his favorite player, was so human. Phoenix was that kind of person, showing me that side of himself. Because I was obsessed with him, even though we only met a few times, I can see things others can't. He spoke with such conviction, I had no room to deny it. I don't know much about you, Fry, but your expression, your actions, your body language. Phoenix smiled. It's like I'm seeing a younger Abraham. You're just like him. I frowned for a second, but kept a straight face. I wonder about that. From my point of view, you seem more like his son than I do. Phoenix stared at me. Maybe he misunderstood my words. No, he definitely did. Talent isn't everything, Fry Starlight. Remember that. Maybe he was referring to my officially recorded A-rank talent. Did he think I said that because I was insecure? I'll keep your words in mind. I didn't bother correcting the misunderstanding. It was better this way. Phoenix realized he'd stayed too long. Any more and we'll both be in trouble. He mumbled, and his body began to glow. It was a short meeting, but I'm glad I met you, son of Abraham. Hold on and face this trial to the end. I nodded respectfully. Thank you for your words, Professor Phoenix. Until we meet again. And just like that, he vanished. Not even my hawk eyes could follow his movements. I turned away, frowning. Do I really resemble that man? I clenched my fists and dashed back into the forest. That's not even funny. Don't try to tie me to this cursed world. I'm not a part of it. That night, I fought like a madman. This world kept trying to bind me with its threads, and I had to cut them again and again, to reject it. And to do that, I have to win, no matter what it takes. Far from where Fry Starlight was, Ivar watched the unfolding events on the island with quiet curiosity. The time is almost here. The professors standing behind him hesitated. And they weren't alone. Dozens of Imperial mages and high-ranking individuals were present in that place. Beyond the Grand Hall, the defeated students were dragged in, one after another. Some were unharmed, others disfigured, and some were already dead. The trial had been nothing short of deadly, which is why, in this very moment, hesitation gripped them all. Forgive me, Lord Ivar, but are you truly certain about this? Ivar gave a firm nod. Do it. But releasing something like that on first-year students is a bit. Do you want me to repeat myself? No. The senior professor behind him hesitated briefly, before yielding with a reluctant sigh. Let's just hope Phoenix and the other professors are enough, in case anything goes wrong. The old man muttered, while Ivar turned his gaze toward the entity placed upon the island. This is the only way for them to survive what lies ahead. The temple heads. Maybe they were all madmen. Chapter 177. The awaited showdown. 10 days had passed since the island trial began. A third of the exam duration was already over. For some, it had been 10 days of sheer suffering. For others, 10 days of thrill and excitement. The citizens of the Empire had thoroughly enjoyed watching us edge closer to the exam's midpoint. In a short span of time, countless battles had broken out, both one-on-one duels and chaotic group skirmishes. Everyone had witnessed the students struggling to survive. This year's Victoriad felt more like an action-packed survival movie than an ordinary test. By the 10th day, the intensity had reached its peak. The competition had grown absolutely insane. Ding! Day 10 rankings released. 10, Danzo Smasher, 1,450 points. 9, Dawn Polaris, 1,600 points. 5 Ghost Umbra, 1,900 points. 4 Magnus Drill, 2,350 points. 3 Fry Starlight, 2,500 points. 2 Snow Lionheart, 3,440 points. 1 Demon Valerian, 3,480 points. You may spend 500 points to reveal the location of a player of your choice. The reason for all this excitement? It was right there in the rankings. The first and second place holders were the cause of the madness. They had been clashing non-stop for days. And they still were. Demon couldn't afford to spend 500 points to locate Snow. The gap between them was too narrow, and any slip-up could cost him his position. So, he had no choice but to sprint across the massive island, searching for Snow at every potential rendezvous point or crossing path. But the island was enormous. Even 10 days weren't enough to fully explore it. The madness continued. Day 11 on the island. Ding! Updated rankings. 1 Snow Lionheart, 3,600 points. 2 Demon Valerian, 3,580 points. He passed him. Snow took the lead. The spectators roared. The scenes involving Snow and Demon had become the center of attention. Day 12 on the island. Ding! 1 Demon Valerian, 3,840 points. 2 Snow Lionheart, 3,800 points. The tides turned once again. What kind of competition is this? Do they even sleep? When do these people rest? The world began to wonder whether those students were even human anymore. Day 13 on the island. Ding! 1 Demon Valerian, 4,100 points. 2 Snow Lionheart, 4,095 points. By now, it had become common to see crowds gathering in corners of the empire. Hurry! Place your bets now. Who will finish first in the Victoriad qualifiers? The people of the empire constantly wagered their fortunes on their favorite contender. Even nobles and high-ranking officials weren't exempt. The Victoriad was fulfilling its purpose. For a brief time, everyone forgot that war was looming. That heavy, depressing atmosphere caused by past massacres had slowly begun to fade. And more importantly, the temple had once again proven itself to be the #1 source of talent in the world. What they were seeing now on those screens was the power that would soon lead the empire and the war to come. And this crazy competition? It was far from over. Even the heads of guilds and the leaders of great noble houses were watching this trial with keen interest. Day 14 on the island. Ding! 1 Snow Lionheart, 4,380 points. 2 Demon Valerian, 4,375 points. He passed him again. First years are insane this time. The sight of Demon ruthlessly blasting his opponents with storms of lightning had become something of a routine by now. On the other hand, Snow, who danced through battle with a wild sword style, channeling an absurd number of elemental powers, was a visual spectacle like no other. Their ongoing rivalry, as they continuously clashed with the other temple students, had fueled the excitement to a fever pitch. And clearly, those two stood far above the rest. Even upper-year students from the second and third years couldn't match their dominance. And now here we are. Day 15 on the island. Ding! Demon Valerian, 4,500 points. Snow Lionheart, 4,500 points. The entire world held its breath. Eyes were glued to the screens, no one dared to blink. The points were tied. But that wasn't what mattered. What happened next was the turning point. Checkpoint F7. They stood there, facing each other. They had arrived from different paths. But that didn't matter. For the first time, they were standing on the same ground. Snow Lionheart and Demon Valerian. Their gazes locked. Anyone watching could feel it. The answer to this moment was clear. A battle was inevitable. Demon Valerian versus Snow Lionheart. The long-awaited clash was finally about to unfold. Demon brushed back his golden hair as he stepped toward Snow. His massive frame, those thick, coiled muscles nearly bursting from beneath his black armor, lined with golden patterns, made him an imposing sight. He was terrifying. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this, Snow Lionheart." Snow said nothing. His appearance was modest, wearing the temple's standard white armor, a sign of his lack of noble background. But his presence didn't fall short in the slightest. His white hair and calm expression had already made him wildly popular among the Empire's girls. You could say each of them was born to be the face of an era in their own way. Snow slowly drew his sword. "Come." Demon bared his teeth. "You've been a thorn in my side this whole time. I'll admit it. I've never pushed myself this hard before. But it ends now." He slammed his fists together, crackling with a terrifying surge of lightning-infused aura. "Here and now, let's end this." The wind howled around them. All nearby creatures fled. The battle was about to begin. "Hoof!" With a deep breath, Demon Valyrian roared, his sculpted, muscle-bound body surging with raw might. Bzzzt. Bzzzt. The electricity crackling from his body was no joke. Now fully cloaked in explosive lightning aura, Demon let out a war cry and charged forward. "Let's go!" The golden tank slammed the ground, bursting into a bolt of lightning as he rushed towards Snow. Snow, in response, anchored himself with gravity and earth aura. Come. Chapter 178. Snow Lionheart vs. Demon Valyrian. Demon's fist came crashing down onto Snow's sword with violent force. The momentum sent Snow flying backward as both of them tore through rocks and trees like paper. Amid the whirlwind of dust and debris, Demon grabbed Snow by the face and hurled him into the air. Gathering power in his core, the Valyrian let out a roar, unleashing waves of slicing wind slashes skyward. Suspended midair, Snow remained eerily calm, a stillness unfit for the chaos. Void step. Demon's eyes were still fixed above, his slashes yet to land. But Snow was suddenly beside him. His blade ignited with brilliant blue fire. With blinding speed, Snow struck, but Demon blocked it with the back of his hand, barely managing thanks to his lightning-enhanced reflexes. That speed! Demon tried to counter, but found himself on the defensive, backpedaling wildly as Snow unleashed a relentless barrage. In just a single second, the white-haired youth delivered an unbelievable number of strikes. From a distance, it looked like he was wielding 100 swords, his afterimages trailing like ghost blades in the air. Demon responded in kind, his fists moving non-stop, knocking Snow's blade away again and again. The fiery blue aura flaring between them from the collisions scorched the ground with every clash. Demon was defending? Even he couldn't stomach the idea. Without warning, the Thunder Beast clapped his hands. So fast even Snow, with all his heightened senses, couldn't react. A wave of wind blasted Snow backward. Demon closed in immediately, his yellow aura eyes blazing like miniature suns. His battle cry rattled the air. His fists, now brimming with terrifying amounts of lightning, came crashing down. He pummeled Snow from above with a storm of punches, a rain of thunder. Snow gritted his teeth, and just as the flames vanished, a surge of icy chill took their place. Absolute zero. Whoosh! The entire battlefield froze, the scorched earth now trapped under a sheet of frost, completely halting the lightning barrage. Demon's eyes widened as he looked down. Half his body was frozen, and Snow was charging in, now cloaked in lightning aura himself. At that moment, red veins flashed across Demon's pupils. Son of a bitch! Slash! Snow's blade tore into Demon's frozen frame. The ground was stained with the tyrant's blood. Wounds opened across Demon's grimacing body. Snow didn't stop. His arm, wielding the blade, moved like a machine of war. For a moment, it felt like Snow had completely overpowered him. That was the illusion to distant onlookers. But Snow stopped, or rather was forced to stop, when that muscular hand of Demon Valyrian caught his sword mid-strike. It gripped tight, blood trickling down from the pressure. Demon, now bloodied, stared straight at Snow. Next to his colossal frame, Snow looked so small. "You're using lightning against me?" "Me!" The grinding of teeth echoed. And then Demon punched Snow with such force. The impact launched him a terrifying distance away. "Don't mess with me!" Lightning-laced wind slashes raged toward Snow. Demon standing in the heart of the storm. "Let me show you how you really use lightning." This time, the lightning wasn't just overwhelming. It was refined. Just as Headmaster Ivar Valerian, the Empire's greatest archer, once said, "Lightning is a unique upper element. Not everyone gets the chance to unlock its true potential. Most don't even understand it. If you want to use lightning properly, don't amplify it. Do the exact opposite. The secret lies in compression." Demon was dead serious. He compressed the lightning tightly around his fists. The surging thunder clashed and sparked violently, intensifying in power and ferocity, but Demon kept it completely under control. The densely compressed lightning began to change in color and form. Snow stared, mesmerized by the sight. Demon descended with fists cloaked in black lightning. So intense it made every hair on Snow's body stand on edge. He knew instantly what was coming was catastrophic. And it was. Demon's arms moved with unreal speed, landing an overwhelming flurry of punches that dug deep into Snow's body, tearing through him with the devastating force of compressed black lightning. Even with his starlight aura pushed to its limit, Snow struggled just to withstand Demon's rampage, whose speed and strength had both multiplied several times over. "I'll bury you here and now." The ground shook violently. Snow continued to retreat, step after step. The once radiant glow of starlight looked dim in the face of this erupting storm of black lightning. Demon's strikes were too fast. His aura-infused fists kept Snow staggering with each blow. Snow's sword barely held up, his body even less so. Yet in the midst of that punishment, the golden eyes of the Lionheart youth stared at his brutal opponent, glowing brighter than ever. Snow's mind was sharper than his body. His thoughts moved faster than his muscles. Too fast. In this state of black lightning, Demon was terrifying. Even if Snow used Void Step, Demon would instantly catch up. His body was nearly unbreakable. Piercing it was no easy feat. If Snow tried to widen the distance, Demon would just bombard him with lightning-infused wind slashes. His senses were honed to the extreme. Sneaking up on him was impossible. Snow's eyes came to a single conclusion. Perfect. Demon was flawless, ruthless, without weakness. Snow couldn't see a single opening. But then, like a spark slowly growing into a blaze, Snow breathed in fire, then exhaled aura overflowing. He inhaled pure energy. Was this level enough to bring him down? Was this enough to conquer him? In front of that overwhelming black lightning, starlight exploded. Demon's eyes widened as he suddenly began receiving blows of his own. Snow was fighting back, blow for blow. No weak points, huh? The two clashed in a brutal tug-of-war between black lightning aura and blue starlight aura. Their aura collided violently, the force pushing both of them back again and again. "Then I'll become your weak point. No flaws? Then I'll break you with something stronger than anything you have." That was Snow's answer. Ferocity, nothing less. The speed of his slashes increased. And in return, Demon's fists moved even faster. Boom, 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 boom. A brutal exchange of strikes. Hot blood splashed violently. Their enhanced bodies were struggling to keep up with the sheer pressure of this battle. Ha-ia! They both roared at the same time, each trying to overpower the other, locked in a savage contest of pure force. Neither Demon nor Snow would back down here. More. Just a little more. More. Just a little more. I won't stop. I won't let him push me back. A shared thought flooded both of their minds. He won't last. Just a little more. Faster. Stronger. Harder. At some point, time itself seemed to slow down for both of them. Despite their young age, both were fighters. Naturals. Battle-hardened. Instinctive warriors. But this time it was the white-haired one who acted first. Demons saw it too late. The ice spears Snow had formed above their heads. The same principle of lightning compression applied to cursed ice. With a terrifying grin, Snow increased the speed and power of his strikes. "Get ready, it's coming." Demon was stunned. When did he even prepare this attack? Even worse, Snow had kept him locked in close quarters combat this whole time. The spears would hit Snow too. But Snow didn't care. Let's see who can take more. In the middle of that aura clash, the frozen spears rained down from above without mercy. "Hit me with everything you got." Demon gritted his teeth, enduring the storm. Snow did the same. It felt like a metal hammer was bashing their skulls repeatedly. But neither could stop. Whoever stopped attacking would lose. It only took a few seconds for the rhythm to finally break. Snow's azurite blade pierced deep into Demon's chest. Demon was launched through the air. Their heads bloodied, their bodies wrecked. Snow had gained the upper hand, charging after Demon with relentless force. Sure, we both took the same hit from the ice. Snow slashed madly, targeting Demon's vital points. But it was my ice. Slash. Of course the damage wouldn't be equal. The tide had turned. Snow didn't hesitate. He attacked violently while Demon barely blocked. At that moment, Snow extended his left hand and grabbed Demon's face. While Demon's focus was still locked on the sword, he didn't see that hand coming. Snow applied gravity force through his palm, slamming Demon's face into the ground. Then he dragged him mercilessly across the terrain before hurling him away. Elemental chaos. Light. Star. Darkness. Fire. Lightning. Snow unleashed every ounce of destructive power he had. Demon barely endured. The young man clenched his teeth hard, his perfect body refined to its peak. His immense power and terrifying talent, said to rival Emperor Mikar himself, all of that. And he was still losing? To this man standing in front of him, Demon felt his head boil with heat, sweat, blood, and grime blurring his vision. The wounded lion roared in fury, his eyes turning pure white. Every last drop of aura he had left surged to the surface. Black lightning expanded violently, sending out a shockwave of terrifying force, shattering the barrage Snow had just sent. "I won't lose, even if it kills me." His mind couldn't accept it. But Snow was worse. Snow Lionheart would never accept defeat. Demon's desperate counter. Snow's unrelenting assault, his body barely holding up. At some point, everything turned red in Snow's vision. But he didn't stop. Strike after strike. Wound after wound. Blood for blood. That radiant sword, and those raging fists. At the end of their clash, they both saw it. Just for a moment. A single moment. The sword broke through everything, piercing without mercy. Demon saw it coming. Snow, his eyes now glowing with a terrifying blue light, looked nothing short of a monster. And that sword made Demon Valerian feel something he had never experienced before. Fear. The fear of defeat. But reality isn't always fair. Every story has a beginning, but some have no end. No one understood what had just happened. A terrifying wave of aura swept through them both, forcing them to stop. A cursed aura, accompanied by a dreadful sound. A wail. The wail of a beast. And not just any beast. Both Demon and Snow turned their eyes toward the colossal tree that reached up to the sky. But it wasn't a tree. That thing had split apart into eight massive legs buried deep in the ground. One of them crashed down near Demon and Snow, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. And between those legs, a creature emerged. Grotesque, monstrous, spider-like, yet more horrific than even the worst nightmares of Menses. That thing was crying. Crying for this filthy world it had been born into. It wept and screamed. But what the students across the island heard was not a cry. It was the savage roar of a beast gone mad, and it began destroying everything around it. Among those watching, Fry Starlight, His eyes widened in disbelief. The Lady of 8 Legs. Even in his wildest thoughts, he had never imagined Ivar Valerian would descend into madness this far. He released a nightmare lord here? A catastrophe had descended upon them all. Ding! Nightmare creature. Lady of 8 Legs. Class? Points? The hunt has begun. Chapter 179. Pride of a Warrior. Fry Starlight's POV. This can't be real. I couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing. No, what my ears were hearing. The terrifying wail of that 8-limbed monstrosity. The Lady of 8 Legs had entered a frenzy, trampling everything around her in a fit of madness. Her size was colossal, almost mountain-like. I could see her even from a great distance. And even from here, that cursed aura reached me. No, that's not the real one. It's impossible for the Empire to have subdued the real Lady of 8 Legs. She is one of the 3 Nightmare Lords, alongside Cosmos and the Abyss Watcher. In other words, she belongs to the SS Plus class. But what I was seeing now was much weaker. Once I calmed down and properly assessed the situation, I began to notice the differences. The real lady's size is supposed to be far greater than this. Based on those facts, this must be one of her offspring. She looked like she had just been born recently. For the Empire to venture deep into the southern Nightmare Lands and return with this, right from under her mother's nose, the Emperor and his family are completely insane. Still, this false lady was massive in her own right. Just her landing on the island had already wiped out dozens of participants. If they weren't careful, they'd die. Her venom alone was instantly lethal. I glanced at my wristwatch before stepping away. I'm not crazy enough to take that thing on. They didn't even assign it a point value, which meant it couldn't be killed by us. The Lady of 8 Legs had absurd regeneration, regenerating instantly no matter how many times she was cut down. So the purpose of unleashing this thing was likely to teach us how to run, how to deal with entities far beyond our strength. Whatever the reason, it didn't matter to me. Survive until the end. Pass the exam. That's all it came down to. Fry Starlight was far enough away. He didn't suffer from the wrath of the Lady of 8 Legs. But for those nearby, everything changed. Among them, Snow Lionheart and Demon Valerian were buried beneath the ground after the lady's last rampage. One of her legs struck close by, and it flipped the land above their heads, though she hadn't even hit them directly. You could say the whole world held its breath after that scene. The battle between Demon and Snow had been so incredible, it made the citizens of the Empire leap to their feet in excitement. Then came the shock. Seeing Snow wield multiple elements as if it were nothing left everyone stunned. Even the most gifted individuals were only ever born with 2 elements at most. His use of all 6 triggered a violent reaction from the church, especially from Bishop Platier, who trembled as he watched Snow fight. A blessed one, with such talent and presence. The rest of his clergy agreed. This must be a blessing from their God. The one they revered and worshipped, the Lord of Light. They were fully convinced that all divine gifts bestowed upon mankind came from the great Light Sovereign. So Snow's overwhelming talent was the ultimate proof, the perfect example. Even Eurasha, the silent saintess, was visibly stunned by Snow's presence. Even the blind could see it now. This was the one they had been waiting for, their prophesied hero. But their hopes were about to be swallowed by despair. After the Lady of 8 Legs' devastating attack, both Snow and Demon were swallowed by the earth, gone without a trace. Who knew? Maybe their hero was buried before he could even rise. Tension had reached its peak. A monstrous nightmare creature had invaded the trial, and their favorite heroes were now missing. The spectators' emotions were in absolute chaos. Snow Lionheart POV. A splitting headache, unbearable pain. My face was drenched in blood, grime, and dust, to the point where I'd accidentally swallowed some of it. It was a struggle just to open my eyes. I was still gripping my sword, but my body felt wrecked, like a giant had stomped on it. The last thing I remembered was fighting Demon, then that thing attacking us. You could say we'd been buried deep underground. But I was still alive. How long are you planning to stay unconscious, you bastard? My senses slowly started coming back. I heard Demon's voice nearby. When my blurred vision finally cleared, I saw something strange. The space was extremely narrow. A massive chunk of rock hovered above us, threatening to crush us under its terrifying weight. The only thing holding it back was that guy. Demon stood over me, holding up the monstrous slab of stone, keeping it from collapsing on us. And when I looked closer, there's no way someone like Demon should be able to withstand something like that. But he wasn't in his usual state. I was stunned by what I saw. Only his hair and the top half of his face were visible. The rest of his body was wrapped in a terrifying armor unlike anything I'd ever seen. A jet-black suit with golden, scale-like engravings woven in intricate patterns, as if the armor had been ornately crafted just for this moment. From above, the armor even covered his mouth and nose, making him look like a raging dragon ready to devour its prey. The pressure he was releasing wasn't a joke. But thanks to it, Demon endured. Demon, you. Don't look at me like that. Huff. Do something. I'm at my limit. I didn't know how long we'd been stuck like that, but Demon's condition was clearly bad. Even with the borrowed power of that strange armor, his body had taken a beating from our fight. Hold on. I took a deep breath, summoning every bit of aura I had left. Mass reduction. With my right hand, I touched the massive slab above us, manipulating its nature, trying to reduce its weight. With my other hand, I tossed my sword aside and summoned ice. Ice formation. Little by little, I kept lightening the stone above us while simultaneously building up pillars of ice beneath it. Demon kept it steady, giving me the time I needed. And only after I took on part of the weight did I realize how utterly insane it was that he had held it up alone. The mass was no joke. It took nearly an hour of effort to finally reduce the weight enough for us to push it away and catch our breath. Surrounded by my ice supports, I stood to my feet with difficulty, while Demon collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. That strange armor of his began fading away, visibly retracting. In a bizarre process, it withdrew into his skin, reforming as a tattoo. A massive dragon emblazoned across his right arm and part of his back. That, I pointed to the tattoo. Demon, panting heavily, raised a finger to his lips. I just saved your damned life. So don't say a word. I got the message loud and clear. If anyone found out he used armor like that, he'd be disqualified on the spot. That thing had to be at least S rank. Why did you save me? That question bothered me even more than the armor itself. Demon could have saved himself with that power. I, on the other hand, would have been teleported out, disqualified. In other words, he didn't save my life. He kept me in the exam. Demon, sweating heavily, barely sitting upright, took a moment before answering. His body released steam with every breath. He didn't look human anymore. He looked like a machine pushed to its limit. It's not over yet. He spoke with difficulty. Our fight. It's not finished. I'm not letting you run away now. If I'd been disqualified halfway through, I might not have made it into the elimination rounds. Only the top 8 qualify. Even with my current points, we'll both make it through, and then I'll crush you in the next round. For a moment, I was genuinely impressed by how proud he was of himself. Even in this condition, he still wanted to prove he was the strongest. Not through tricks or schemes, but through his own strength. In his eyes, he was the strongest. That passion of his earned my respect. You can't beat me. Tsh, empty words. I stepped forward, grabbing his arm and helping support his weight. What are you doing? Demon clearly didn't like what I was doing, but in his current state, he couldn't stop me either. You said you'd beat me, right? Then let's get out of here first. Your dumb body's already sucked all the air out of this place. Tsh, this is nothing. I'll make my own path out. Sure. I'd love to see that. I ignored him and began digging a tunnel upward. We needed to get out of here. Though it seemed simple, it wasn't. We were in a sealed space. The air we were breathing wouldn't last much longer unless we found a way out. Especially with our current physical states. We might get eliminated in the dumbest way possible, suffocation. With that thought in mind, I began carving a tunnel upward, carrying a gorilla-sized demon on my back. Chapter 180, Cold War. Earlier, Fry Starlight had seen what happened to Snow and Demon. Hawk eyes made spotting things from a distance trivial. Despite how rough things looked for them, Fry knew his chosen hero would survive. After all, Snow was made to be the perfect version of the writer of Fry. Superior in every way. A being like that couldn't possibly fall to something like this. And so, unlike the rest of the Empire, who watched in fear and uncertainty, Fry remained calm, continuing through the trial without pause. Day 17 on the island. Ding! Ranking update. 10 Ragnaclawed, Year 1 2400 points. 9. Dawn Polaris, Year 1 2650 points. 8. Danzo Smasher, Year 1 2680 points. 7. Reagan Zenin, Year 3 2800 points. 6. Saris Moonlight, Year 1 2900 points. 5. Ghost Umbra, Year 1 3000 points. 4. Magnus Greel, Year 3 3750 points. 3. Fry Starlight, Year 1 3800 points. 1. Snow Lionheart, Year 1 4500 points. 1. Demon Valyrian, Year 1 4500 points. Snow Lionheart and Demon Valyrian scores had been frozen for 2 full days. Yet even so, the gap between them and the rest of the competition was still massive, a result of their ferocious rivalry since Day 10. On the other hand, earning points had become significantly harder now. The Lady of 8 Legs had plunged the entire island into chaos. She continued to destroy everything in her path, relentlessly. On the first day of her appearance, a few fools tried to attack her. Some even succeeded in severing one of her legs, but they regretted it deeply, because 2 legs grew in its place. The Lady of 8 Legs. Whenever she lost a limb, 2 more would grow, almost instantly, each one stronger than before. She now had 10 legs, and was actively eliminating students one after another. This time, the instructors were intervening directly to extract eliminated students. Since her venom was instantly lethal, a single touch meant death. The number of players had dropped at a terrifying pace. Now, everyone avoided her location completely, even if their watches directed them there. Despite a few deaths, Ivar succeeded in his goal, forcing the students to experience the terror of beings far beyond their strength. Of course, people like Fry never needed that kind of lesson. And now, with more than half the exam completed, only 80 players remained on the island. When the exam began, there were over 500 players. A terrifying number had already been eliminated. Somewhere high in the mountains at one of the checkpoints, a young man with blonde hair sat calmly, wearing the armor of House Valyrian. Aegon gazed at the distant figure with a faint smile on his face. So that's her. The Lady of 8 Legs. One of the most ancient nightmare creatures. Even though it wasn't the real one, just a newborn child, Aegon still found himself intrigued. My lord, how strong is that thing? The question came from one of Aegon's escorts, a slender young man with black hair and narrow eyes. Reagan Zenin, one of the strongest awakened of the 3rd year. He was now accompanying the prince, ever since Missandei had been eliminated. Aegon spoke to the surrounding 3rd years like he was their superior, not the other way around. The real Lady of 8 Legs lays countless eggs every few years, but then devours them all to increase her power. That's the secret behind her terrifying strength and her continuous evolution. What we're seeing now is a lucky survivor, a child who escaped her mother's fangs. A fascinating creature. Aegon explained casually. Even though the creature before him had caught his interest, it was nothing more than that. He shrugged, finishing his statement. This one's a newborn, so she's probably around S+ or SS class at best. Don't even think about fighting her. Death is all that awaits. Everyone nodded at once. As expected of the prince, his knowledge is unmatched. Reagan admired the young prince greatly. That made him hesitant to say what came next. My apologies, my lord. As soon as he apologized, Aegon replied with a smile. Fry, isn't it? Reagan nodded. We didn't expect him to defeat Missandei and her entire elite squad. Indeed, he did quite well there. Reagan was a bit confused by Aegon's praise of Fry, but he didn't dwell on it for long and continued. This time we'll all move together under Magnus' lead. We've got enough points to locate him. It's only a matter of time. Only about 33rd years remain now. A decent number, but most of them were average students, as the best of their ranks had fallen alongside Missandei during that ill-fated day. Still, the number was more than enough, especially with both Magnus and Reagan leading the charge. Both of them were among the top-tier fighters. This would likely be the strongest assault they'd launch on Fry so far. Aegon nodded in approval. Very good. You may go. Reagan hesitated slightly before nodding. Are you sure, my lord? About staying here alone while we deal with Fry. This entire plan had come from Aegon himself. He had ordered them all to attack, leaving him without any guards. For a moment, Aegon was disgusted by Reagan's words, but didn't let it show on his face. Yes, that's an order. All of you will attack. Reagan didn't dare press further. He left reluctantly. Aegon remained alone, eyes fixed on the Lady of 8 Legs. Trash like you protecting me? Don't make me laugh. From the very start, they hadn't been his bodyguards. He had simply kept them nearby, pawns for his greater schemes, a way to secure their allegiance in the throne succession race. All political games. As for protection, he didn't need any. In the midst of these thoughts, Aegon's right hand trembled suddenly, black lightning crackling faintly around it. He immediately grabbed it, grinning. Ha ha! Ah! How I long for it! Slowly the hand settled. Aegon rose to his feet. Not yet. And with those words, the prince vanished. Day 18 of the island trial. The Empire breathed a collective sigh of relief. The reason was simple. Snow Lionheart and Demon Valyrian had finally dug their way out. Covered in layers of dust and grime, the two finally emerged into the open, gasping for breath. Badly injured, exhausted, but the light in their eyes never faded. It's finally over. Snow exhaled, greedily inhaling the fresh air. Beside him, Demon turned away and began walking off. Remember this, Snow Lionheart. Our fight isn't over yet. Snow stared at his back for a moment. You're welcome to come at me whenever you want. Demon smirked, then disappeared in a flash of lightning. Snow too went his own way. As they both opened their maps, the same thought crossed their minds. Get supplies, recover, then return to the battlefield ASAP. They were machines, relentless. Snow now had another reason to push harder. That armor Demon had used. If they fought again and Demon used that armor, Snow knew he'd lose, and badly, but he wouldn't accept that. Even if his opponent was using an external weapon or tool like that, in the battlefield, life can be taken in an instant. There's no room to cry about unfairness. Stronger. Snow clenched his fists tightly. He had to become strong enough to crush his opponents, and everything they brought with them. V and that strange sword he'd fought with, Demon and that monstrous armor. He had to become strong enough to break them all. With those thoughts, Snow dashed toward the nearest supply ring. The trial wasn't over yet. Fry Starlight's perspective. Sitting atop a massive rock, I gazed out across the forest in front of me. The Lady of 8 Legs was roaming through the tall trees, wailing softly. Less than 12 days remained until the exam ended. And with the end drawing near, their move was coming. The group that's trying to kill me will strike soon. But how? That I didn't know. I could no longer afford to handle the third years like I had during the earlier days of the trial. I didn't know when the Moonlight extremists would come for me, which meant It was time to make a move of my own. I couldn't keep playing along to Aegon's tune forever. I already had a plan in mind, but before I could put it into motion, I opened my system panel. Looking over my stats, achievement points, and the empty quest list, I felt something strange stir within me. Host name, Fry Starlight, Dual Soul. Class, Swordsman. Talent grade S. Current rank, C+. Strength, C-. Speed, B-. Agility, C+. Endurance, C. Aura, SSS. Magic. Swordsmanship LV. 4. Limit broken user can now reach level 7. Inherent talents.
Swordsmanship, aura manipulation, poison résistance.
Combat style, 10,000 steps of shadow. Skills. Hawkeyes, a class. Phantom steps, a class. Seduction, D class. Ascension, S class. Ignition, SS class. Abilities. Shadow adaptation, 07. Anti-magic, level 1. Current achievement points, 5,000. I had some achievement points saved up. I wanted to gather more, to shatter the next talent barrier and push it up to SS. It would take 8,000 points to make that happen. But I couldn't stop myself from trying. Direct advice, 500 achievement points. Random advice, 250 achievement points. The cost for advice had skyrocketed. This system was total garbage. But I didn't care. I immediately used the direct advice option. How can I win the Victoriad? That's how I phrased the question. The Victoriad. It's all I'd been thinking about, day in and day out. If I didn't ask now, the thoughts might actually kill me. And unexpectedly, the system replied, look at yourself in the mirror and understand the reflection. Huh? I reread the advice over and over, but I couldn't make sense of it. Did I really use the direct advice? Why does it sound like a random fortune cookie? Just to be sure, I tried the same question with the random advice option. And the result? Look at yourself in the mirror and understand the reflection. Same garbage. Did the system finally break? Or maybe the idiot behind the screen got hacked. Why are you throwing nonsense at me? Look in the mirror? What am I supposed to see? My miserable face? My cursed system was utterly useless. Even shadow adaptation hadn't budged in 2 years. Shadow adaptation, 07. What a worthless system. I tossed my device into Valyrian's tattoo storage and turned back to my original plan. I fiddled with my smartwatch. I needed a way to fend off the third years and Aegon. And the solution was simple. Ding! Are you sure you want to spend 500 points to locate a player? I didn't hesitate. I confirmed immediately. Points deducted. Fry Starlight, 3,300 points. Rank, 4. I dropped 1 rank, but I didn't care. In the search bar I typed her name, Sansa Valyrian. Time to play this your way, Aegon.